Anne Marie, are we ready to begin?
Yes, it is 5:30. You can begin if you can confirm who is all here, please.
I am going to look through and confirm board members. So I see that we have Seth here, Brian Nelson, Nikki, Tracy, Jennifer, Jim, Robin, and it looks like we're missing David right now. So maybe he will join us. Hopefully he'll join us in a little bit. All right, welcome everyone. We're going to work on getting through this meeting together, so asking for a little grace and patience ahead of time. I know I'll need it, so I thank you for your support. I did want to mention a couple of items, housekeeping items, before we get going with the agenda. And some folks have asked why we are having a virtual meeting starting today. Those are scheduled, our regular board meetings are scheduled virtually until further notice. And really that was because board members had been receiving some communication and concerns, complaints regarding meetings being held in person and individuals attending those meetings that were not abiding by the policy that was set forth by the board, where anyone entering the district buildings needs to abide by the mitigation strategies for COVID-19. So the full mitigation strategies, which included masking. And so the governance committee took that item up for discussion. That's the committee, as we know, in charge of working on agendas and agenda planning. And after a thorough discussion, the decision was made to hold the meetings beginning, again, our regular board meetings beginning at this meeting virtually until further notice, with the decision that committee meetings will be held, the decision on how committee meetings would be held would be left to the committee chairs. So some committee meetings may be held virtually, some might be held in person. And also the opportunity to make sure that we continue to offer public comment. And so the public has been given the ability to access and join and share comments virtually in this setting as well. I believe we have one person that signed up to speak with us this evening. So a couple of other items, asking if you need to have a question or make a comment. If you are able to, if you raise your hand, I will definitely try to notice you. If I need to be reminded, please feel free to remind me. If you see someone with their hand up and I do not catch that, please remind me. We will take a 5-minute break after the report section of the agenda. And after the reports are given, or as the reports are given, I would just suggest that we hold our questions until the end of each report so that we're able to move through that section in a good manner. And try to remember to mute your microphone and take turns talking as we move through the meeting. So right now, I think that was it in terms of comments I wanted to make sure that I made. So at this moment, then I will call for approval of the agenda, if there is a motion for approval of the agenda. Jim and Jennifer.
Rebecca, I'll move approval of the agenda with the addition of the HR addendum that was provided to us late this afternoon.
Okay, there has been a motion for approval of the agenda with the, with the addition of the HR addendum. Jennifer, I saw you had your hand up as well. And Jennifer, go ahead and unmute, please.
Sorry, thank you for the reminder. So thank you, Rebecca. If I may also add an item to the agenda, I would, can I do that now? Make that request?
If you would like to make an amendment to the motion that was made.
Rebecca, I need a second on the motion before there could be an amendment made.
Okay, is there a second to Jim's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Tracy. All right, Jennifer, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I would like for us to add the adoption of a resolution similar to, well, basically to marry the West Fargo's resolution. So I would like discussion to happen. So if we could add that under our business item, that would be great.
Okay, there has been a motion for approval of the agenda with the addition of the HR addendum. There was a second to that. And then additionally, Jennifer asking for something. Jennifer, were you wondering about this to be added under business or what part of the agenda?
Please. Yes, please.
Under business.
Correct.
Anne Marie, would you like to advise us on protocol?
There would need to be a second to that amendment.
All right, thank you, Anne Marie, for that reminder. Is there a second to the amendment? I'm going to look through the, as we've said, we're having a Brady Bunch screen here. I'm going to look through the screen here. I want to make sure if David has joined us. I don't see him here yet. Is there a hand up for a second to the
I'm
second?
here. This is David. I second it.
Okay, David, thank you. All right, Anne Marie, would you advise again on protocol?
You will need a vote on adding that to the motion on the floor to adopt the agenda.
And we need we would like a roll call vote for that, Anne Marie, so that you can record that in the minutes. Is that correct?
It might be easiest for me if I do a roll call, just because we're on Zoom.
Okay, and so since there was a second by David to that, is there any discussion at this point? Feel free to raise your hand and unmute if you have discussion.
Brian here.
All right, Brian, go ahead.
What is the purpose for adding this?
Jennifer, would you like to explain further?
I'm sorry. Sure. Yes. So I'm not sure if you were able to attend, Brian, the conference call last week for school board members with Kirsten Basler, but she discussed or shared, I guess, and gave kudos to a couple of districts in the state that have worked closely with the community around coming together and developing or updating their policies as they relate to mitigation strategies around with COVID. And West Fargo's has adopted a resolution that is specific to this. And so I would like for us to consider adopting it as well.
Are there any other questions or discussion?
This is Nikki. How does that change what we're doing now? I mean, are we entertaining a discussion to go backwards on where we're at now?
So
I'm not sure what you, oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
sorry, Jennifer. I know we'll stumble around a little bit here over each other, and we'll just apologize ahead of time for that. I believe what we need to decide right now, and maybe Nikki, this is the purpose of your question, is if we are going to approve adding this item to the agenda or not. And of course, we can have a more thorough, if we do decide to add this to the agenda, we can have a more thorough discussion at that point. Just want to make sure that the question is pertinent. Nikki, do you still feel like you have a question?
Not really. I mean, if it comes to discussion, I guess I'm just kind of trying to figure out too, to play off of what Brian said, where we're headed with it. I guess that tells me if we want it on the agenda or not. I'm not quite sure the intent and where we're headed, what we want to do with this.
Understood.
I guess I would say either way, it's it's a healthy, well, it's a topic that should probably be on our agenda, every time we have a meeting for discussion. So whether it results in, where it goes from there. So I think it does no harm. And it actually, I think is really demonstrating, it would be our responsibility to have this ongoing conversation. So I don't see a harm in putting it on there for discussion.
Am I correct that I don't see any other hands?
David had his hand up.
Okay, David, go ahead.
I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be on the agenda so we can discuss this resolution. If the superintendent of the state has given kudos to a district for openly working with the public on an issue, I think it's something that would be extremely valuable for us to discuss. And putting it on the agenda doesn't automatically say that we've adopted it. It just says that we're open enough to discuss it. So I strongly urge board members to add this to the agenda.
I don't see any other hands up. Anne, unless you feel free to correct me, anyone. Otherwise, Anne Marie, go ahead and please call the roll. So as we vote, please just make sure to unmute. I'll unmute myself right now. Or excuse me, I'll mute myself right now.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
No.
President Knudsen.
Yes, motion passes. So we will have an additional item added to the business section of the agenda. All right, now, do we need to still vote to approve the agenda overall?
Correct. Now you'll need to approve the agenda as amended.
Is there any discussion before that? Oh, right. We, I believe, can just do a quick voice vote on this. And Marie, if you have any questions, please let me know. And go ahead and unmute. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All right, we have an agenda approved. Moving on to the recognition of the audience. We do have, like I said, one person that has signed up to speak this evening. I am going to let you know I'm working off of 2 computer screens this evening to try to help keep the documents in front of me. So if you see me looking off to the side, it's probably because I'm looking at that other screen, which is what I'm doing right now. So I will read the language that we have for audience participation. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and address for the record. Speakers must refrain from using, I'm unmuted, right? Okay. Sorry, speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, the speaker is allotted a maximum of 4 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked, you will ask to conclude. If necessary, there will be a final chime sounding 15 seconds later, signifying the end of your time at the podium. And Alexis Scott has signed up to speak with us this evening. I've also been told that there will be a digital countdown on the screen, so that will help us keep track of time. So I will mute myself, and Alexis, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for having me tonight. My name is Alexis Scott. I live at 2816 39.5 Avenue South in Fargo. And my intention this evening is to educate, those watching and listening to this meeting and try to provide some transparency in what we hoped and expected this board to provide earlier. Tonight, I want to make sure that we have some good communication giving to the community by this board regarding some of its governance practices. The most recent governance meeting, I listened to a very entitled group of leaders discuss ways to silence people that didn't agree with them. First, they made a decision to move these meetings virtually as an inexcusable exercise of power and groupthink to silence parents through a COVID scapegoat. And also asking people to sign up by noon on a Tuesday is ridiculous. This isn't even consistent with the practices of what we have for in-person meetings. They then intentionally discussed and brainstormed ways to potentially ban and bar a school board member from leadership and decisions through active discussion on personal health decisions. Let's ensure that all people listening tonight have a good handle on who these people are and representing them to make their decisions. We have a board member who was excited to come to this meeting tonight to use her mute button on parents. We have a board member who harassed and threatened another board member, and besides a slap on the wrist and removal of title, is still actively involved in leadership and decision-making. This board member was also accused of smoking cigarettes on school property this year, but no further review had taken place. We have another board member who yelled and ostracized teachers earlier this year, but still is making board decisions. We have another board member with multiple court cases of personal irresponsible financial decision-making, but is still, yet again, making school board decisions. We have an entire school board who decided to okay a $17+ million expansion of Discovery Middle School without even adding a single additional seat for students. In fact, we lost about 100 and we still deal with overcapacity. If you believe that personal actions like I just listed above carry weight into how people can effectively lead and make decisions, I want to know why these people are still in their seats. Or is it that you have been able to look past some of these as a difference between personal and professional capacities? What I've heard in the most recent governance meeting is that it's not only okay, but it's actually encouraged to discuss your colleagues' personal health decisions in such a way to decide whether an elected member should be allowed to exercise leadership and voting on board and committee matters. This further informs me that your intentionality, that you intentionally look for ways to discriminate against people, like I told you last meeting when you discriminate against ELL and other learning needs for people. You're continually looking for ways to discriminate against people with different thoughts and views in order to continue to execute some sort of type of an agenda. This board and its leaders are once again working against everything they're expected to uphold by silencing and shutting the door to public and parents, as well as other board members, to tighten the hold on this ugly and disastrous leadership. These actions should be taken seriously by all parents as we continue to demand transparency and communication and opportunities to voice our very serious concerns with this leadership and its direction. Instead of discussing pressing matters of ways to support achievement growth or how we can support mental health needs of students now that past partnerships are gone, this group continues to waste time by gossiping and discussing ways to make sure doors are shut to parents and non-conforming elected leaders. This board needs to put politics aside and start doing the job that you've been elected to do. The issues I brought up tonight are not a result of a mask mandate decision, but rather an intention to continually silence anyone who doesn't agree with you. My only hope is that this board starts focusing on the education of Fargo Public School students. Start listening to parents and teachers and figure out what they need. I don't expect perfection from you, but I expect progress. I look at this agenda tonight and I wonder what am I even here for? It took you almost 15 minutes to set an agenda and get it for approval. This is a waste of time. This is a waste of energy to be telling us that we can't be in person in a school board setting, in a meeting. I want to also remind you that not a single person at the school board meeting was even asked to wear a mask. So that is another place where you all failed to even just ask people to put on masks. You didn't. And maybe if you would have just asked, it would have happened, but you failed to do that. So that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. All right, moving on to the report section of the agenda. And again, we'll take a break after the last report, which is the superintendent's report. The first report is from Christy Jacobson, and it is the SRO program report. Welcome, Christy.
Hello, I'm just trying to be given permission to share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
It looks good.
Yep, you see my presentation screen? Yep, okay. So I just want to take this opportunity to introduce you to one of your community partners here within the police department, specifically our SRO, which falls under our community engagement team. So we are part of neighborhood services, which is our patrol unit, and our community engagement team is oversees within our specialized services. So that's our SROs, our community trust officers, our community cultural liaison officer, our community service officers, that they're the ones that do our animal control and our parking enforcement, our canine team, and we have a variety of other additional services that our unit encompasses. Specifically, what I oversee is our 7 school resource officers, our 3 community trust officers, and our 1 cultural liaison officer. It should be noted that one of our community trust officers is also our community's LGBTQ liaison as well. And then we collaborate with a host of a bunch of community partners and organizations when it pertains to anything that has to do with our youth. So that goes from juvenile court to all of the schools, the Human Relations Commission. We collaborate and engage with BLM, One Fargo, the Black Student Association at NDSU, United Way, Salvation Army, you name it. We are willing and open to partnering and collaborating with any organization that is willing to work with us in a variety of capacities. So this is our SRO group specifically. We have 7 of them. We have 1 in every middle school, high school, and the alternative high school as well. And then in addition to that, we have some additional expectations where we partner with First Safety Town and summer school. We have a presence at any Real Kid event such as Midwest Kid Fest. We currently host a summer camp with in collaboration with the school district, and our SROs are qualified through SRO Basics previously. Before they're assigned into the school, they go to a 40-hour National Association of School Resource Officer training. And then after their first year, they attend an SRO advanced training. And that's also in addition to the onboarding expectations that we have within our own department, which is about 8 to 16 hours of additional training. And then we do, I'll go into more detail about the various programmings that we offer, not only during the school year, but during the summer as well. And then, of course, we also collaborate and assist with any calls for service or patrol staffing or any issues where we're seeing an increase in criminal activity pertaining to a variety of reasons, especially if it pertains to activities amongst our youth in an attempt to be proactive. So our biggest project that we just finished last year, I'm not sure if you're aware, for the last several years, our school have partnered with us in the middle school and high schools where we used to go into an assembly program and we would bring in a motivational speaker and an entertainer and go into all of the schools on having various topics to discuss with the school. Well, obviously, with COVID, that shut down our ability to host major assembly programs. And so at the probably January of last year or so, we started having dialogue with some of the senior principals, particularly at our high schoolers, just kind of figuring it out as we were long-term year planning for us and our budget on whether or not they thought that the start of this school year, we would be able to reinstate the assemblies. And we understood when they told us likely not. And so then we went back to the drawing board, trying to figure out how do we bring these really important messages into the school district. And we had already noticed an increase in depression, suicide ideation that was occurring throughout the community. And so we knew the topic that we wanted to cover. We were just trying to figure out the best outlet to do that, since we weren't going to be able to be in the schools in those assembly programs. And one of the senior principals actually really challenged us to see if there was a way to bring forth that message through a media outlet, video recording, something virtual. And we really took that challenge to heart, and we collaborated with a lot of community partners, and we created our Break the Silence video. And then we essentially turned it back over to the school district. It is a 25-minute video that has 3 keynote speakers of whose lives were impacted by suicide. One of the keynote speakers, is the Mead family who lost their son from Davies High School. We had a very courageous North High School student. She talks about the loss of her sister to suicide. And then we brought in an outside individual, Shannon. He came in and talked about how he had attempted suicide and luckily was not successful. And it just goes through their journey. We also, showing in this picture right here, is we had a bunch of the students from the various schools come in and had a panel discussion with some 3 members of our community. We had a emergency room nurse. We had one of the school social workers from South High School. And we had a physician through Sanford who was also a child psychologist and works at the CAC. And so it's just a dialogue and question answers. And the whole intention and purpose of the creation of this video is really to do exactly what it says, is break the silence, is let people know that they shouldn't be ashamed of having these dialogues, and that there are resources and questions to ask and people to turn to and things like that. And so that was turned over to the schools, and we've actually released that. We have a landing site that's available to anyone really across the US at no cost to be able to utilize that 25-minute video on breakthesilencetogether.org. Over the summer, we re-edited that video into a series of 3 to 5 minute short videos where the target audience is actually through social media. And so we've been releasing a different one regularly throughout this month for Suicide Prevention Month. And we have also partnered with DMF in a lot of their programming that they're doing right now to combat young people being afraid to seek services when they feel like they're having a mental health crisis. And so that's one of the biggest projects that we've been a part of. And then a bunch of different pictures. I'm not sure if you're aware of some of the big programs that we do. We run regularly throughout the school year, and then also through the summer, we host our own programming. We host boxing, kickboxing, self-defense, New American Emergency Survival swim lessons. And then we do some basketball camps, and we do a lot of visitation to our detention facility, the DBGR in Luther Hall, in an attempt to really connect and engage with those kids as well. But the programmings that we offer is at no cost to our young people. We all recognize that when you don't have access to extracurricular activities, that oftentimes you'll find inappropriate things to do to occupy your time. And so we provide them a resource at no cost to them. Transportation is included, and they not only get a skill from a very qualified instructor, they get a mentorship with an officer who's present at all of those classes. Typically, they last anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. And so we do that regularly. And we also expanded that. We have an officer present at summer school throughout the summer. And then we have collaborated with the school district for the last several years, where we have hosted a summer camp program for some of our high need elementary school kids that are particularly coming out of Ed Clapp and Jefferson. And what we have found is that it has assisted in their transition through the summer months when they didn't have that same continuity of resources and schedules. And so we've done that and partnered, and that's kind of what's pictured up in the top of your screen in front of our bus. Those are the kids from summer camp and some of the staff and the officers that have engaged with them. We do Monday through Thursday all day, where they have not only services, but they also go to TNT, they get swim lessons, it's a lot of literacy programming and also just behavioral and emotional management is a lot through that. Some of the other things that we do, we have a really great partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. And so our SROs engage with those kids in a variety of art projects and programming. We've done that throughout the summers. We also intentionally go into our neighborhoods. We have a balance in philosophy where if we see an increase in criminal activity in a certain area throughout the community for a variety of reasons, not only do we increase patrol response and presence of officers, we also intentionally go in on the flip side of that and really engage in a social atmosphere, what we have block parties. And really they're just kind of like cookouts where we partner with some of our landlords or businesses in those neighborhoods. And we just really intentionally target relationship building and trust building and getting the community members to see officers as people and people that they can trust and feel comfortable calling and getting their input, because we want to be very intentional about recognizing that they're the subject matter experts of their neighborhood and their area, and that their insight and perspective and opinions are very valuable. And so this gives us the opportunity to engage with them. And that's kind of one of the pictures that we had in the lower left. We did a pretty good cookout in the Arbors area, is what's the one picture shown there. We partner with your school social workers and counselors and with Salvation Army when they do their Thanksgiving as well as their Christmas food basket giveaway. So we try to help facilitate getting the people who have those needs signed up, and then we assist with the logistics of really just getting those baskets made available to them. And if we have to deliver, we've done some of that before in the past as well. And then of course, our SROs, we engage with the students as often as possible in extracurricular activities. We try to attend some of their games. We engage with not only the students, but the staff and teachers. This last year was the first year that we started our own giving tree. We have been very blessed as a police department that community members recognize that intentional outreach and engagement that we have with the community, that they use us as kind of a bridge for the community members that are in need. And so oftentimes they will deliver and donate toys and presents, and then we will then distribute those toys and donated gifts to our social workers, our counselors, or the community partners that we have once we're made aware that kids have these needs. In the picture down at the bottom is us. We host a holiday meal where our community partners come in and we cook for the kids that are at detention, and they each come out with a holiday gift as well. And this is the picture we showed here. Is we partnered this year with some of the basketball coaches and things from NDSU. So they came in and we played some basketball and had a really nice meal with all of the individuals that don't get to go home because of some choices. But we also want to really let them know that as young people, we recognize everyone makes mistakes. And we're hoping that they can learn from those mistakes and know that we as the police want them to be successful as they reintegrate back into our community. And then a whole bunch of different fun things. One of the summer programs that we offer that's a little bit different than just during the school year. So in addition to the basketball, boxing, kickboxing, self-defense, and swim lessons, we also do an outdoor program over the summer where we take kids on a series of different Friday activities. We take them fishing, we take them hiking, they get to go on we take them canoeing, we teach them how to camp, we do a barbecue, you name it, we do a whole host of different outdoor activities. And then this shows some, oh my light just went out in my office, sorry. A bunch of the different things. And so a lot of the times we also, in the midst of COVID, about 2 summers ago, we started a mentor program. So this started through dialogue that we had with the school administration, where schools had kind of shut down 2 years ago, right around March, April timeframe. And so a lot of our high-risk kids weren't, no one was getting eyes on them and really communicating with their families on keeping up to pace on what their needs might be. And so we kind of were asked to check in on these families, but not in a you're in trouble police kind of way. So we started an informal mentoring. And so at this time of the year, the social worker sent a list of a bunch of their high-risk kids that could really just use some checking in on. And so it was pretty successful about 2 summers ago. And so we continued it again last summer. We had about 200 referrals from our social work and some of our counselors. And so what we do is we send out permission slips to parents to see if they would be willing to allow our officers to just regularly check in on them, see what their interests are, sign them up for our programming, see if they'd be willing to engage. Sometimes it can run from us just stopping by and bringing an ice cream cone or a snack and just engaging, touching base with the kids, letting them know that they have resources and seeing where they're at in their families, if they need anything. But really, it's just that relationship building, mentoring thing. And then over the summer, we also, our SROs are pretty engaged in Safety Town, and we do a lot of summer kid program, just engagement efforts in both daycares and childcare provider centers, where we just really speak for 15, 20 minutes about what it's like to be a police officer and how we're your friend. And if you need anything from us, we do a variety of those kinds of outreach and education events throughout the summer as well. And prior to the startup of the school year, we also partner with United Way, and we assist with logistics. Mostly it's just out there, us helping get the backpacks into the right hands. This is a little bit older of a picture last year. A couple weeks ago, we just did it out at Shields Arena, and that worked out pretty well too. But we're pretty invested in just really meeting the kids where they're at and getting them hooked up with whatever resources and services they might need. And so here's some pictures specifically of our programming, our boxing, kickboxing, and swim lessons. And then some of the transitions that we're kind of looking to go through now too is we also, in the police department, we have a pretty strong educational diversion program. So if kids break the law and make a mistake on a series of offenses, we divert. Instead of creating a juvenile record for these young people, we send their information directly to an educational source where they would go to a class. And we typically send those for the 5 offenses that we divert predominantly for are like disturbance of a public school, disorderly conduct, theft, simple assault, non-familial, and our criminal mischief, which is pretty much vandalism. And since we've been doing that since 2018, we have been able to divert to education without creating any type of a juvenile record for a little over 200 students. And so we're really happy with recognizing and putting the kids into the appropriate consequence, which is mostly just relationship building and education, and recognizing that kids make mistakes and then meeting them where they're at. We are a little bit of a transition with that, just because a lot of the diversion programming that we diverted to was through Lutheran Social Services. So, we're kind of in that transitional phase. And also a lot of the funding has kind of been cut back, but we are researching, trying to determine how to meet that gap, but we're determined to meet it because we recognize the importance of really just educating and helping our kids when they struggle with decision making. So, questions? I think that's all I've got. If there aren't any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Christy. All right, I see some yellow hands up. At least they're yellow on my screen. I see Tracy, Robin, and Rupak. Is that correct? Let's go with Tracy first.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation, and thank you for all that you and the police force do for our kids and that you do in our schools. This is such an incredible partnership. I think we're all really grateful for. My question is around, and maybe it's not directly for you, it could be for administration as well. Why do we only have SROs in our secondary schools? Why is there not an SRO presence in our elementary school?
I don't even think that's probably a conversation for our administration. That was probably a conversation for the district office and the school board. According to our contract, the school district does pay half the salary of the school resource officers that are in the schools. And so I don't know what the reason why we would not be in elementary school, but I can leave that.
I can
Dr.
jump in a little bit.
Go ahead.
Obviously, we've had a long-standing relationship with Fargo PD and the SRO program that has been in place well before even my time. So I won't be able to speak to the genesis of that decision, but I can speak that since I have started in my role, one of the things that we are extremely grateful for is the flexibility and this overall support that we receive from SRO. So if there ever has been a need at the elementary level, we know that we've been able to flex an SRO or utilize them from a feeder middle school campus. but Missy or Bob can correct me if I think otherwise, but at least since I started in Fargo Public Schools, this conversation has never rose because I don't think we've just had that need at the elementary level. So we feel that the support that we need at the secondary building accomplishes everything that we're looking for.
Dr. Gross and Missy, is there anything that either of you would like to add to Rupak's comments?
I will just add that Christy is our main contact for the elementary buildings. And so for problem solving situations if needed, and sometimes it is just to review a situation, and most of them are handled in-house at the elementary level. So that is what Dr. Gandhi was referring to.
And some of the complexity about having an SRO in all of our elementary schools, is the complexity of the fact that a child isn't even culpable for a criminal offense until they are 10 years of age. And so we just want to make sure that we're not putting our law enforcement officers in a poor spot where we would be relied on to work in a situation that is not a police situation. Of course, obviously, we will always and continue to and still do and have always partnered with our schools if there's any safety concerns. And I am a former SRO and SRO trained. And like Missy said, anytime there's any information or complex situations, they don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I'm part of that discussion wraparound services group for those little kiddos. But we do also teach in our elementary schools. Our SROs do go into every 5th grade class teaching programming on drugs, alcohol, and tobacco.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I was just asking from the proponent of like safety and all the positive things you could do for those younger kids, not necessarily the offensive things. So
yeah,
thank
and
you
we
for
go into the elementary schools to do outreach and engagement when there's some complex situations where education needs to occur. Our elementary school principals do not hesitate to reach out to us. So we still do a lot of education in the various classrooms, or if there's complex subjects or behaviors, then we're part of that success team for the elementary schools as well. We just don't have an officer whose full-time Monday through Friday job is to be in that building where we do with the secondary schools.
Thank you, Christy. Robin.
Thank you, Christy, for all you do for our kids. I chair the Badges of Unity Board, which oversees a nonprofit advisory board for dollars. And anybody that wants to contribute to some of these wonderful efforts, and they are preemptive efforts, and I appreciate that. Badges of Unity is connected with Dakota Medical Foundation. You can donate to that to help enrich some of these programs. So sorry, Christy, I could not pass up on plugging for those donations to this wonderful program. We are very blessed in Fargo to have a great relationship with our police department. I work with many organizations around the country, and I think your preemptive efforts are appreciated by everybody, and especially our kids. So thank you for your partnerships. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your works with Boys and Girls Clubs as well.
Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. I really don't have any questions. I just had 2 comments that I wanted to make to the board. First off, I just wanted to express my gratitude to Sergeant Jacobson and the Fargo PD. We really do have a very, very strong relationship with Fargo PD that continues to benefit our students in Fargo Public Schools. And I really also wanted to take time to just elevate the last part of her presentation. I think as most of you saw, there has been, as you know, national narrative around police work and the function of SROs in schools as well. However, I think Fargo is a model example because both my predecessor, Dr. Schatz, and also the current police chief's predecessor, Chief Todd, visited Georgetown University in 2017, really to take a look at the school to prison pipeline and disparities that happen with how policing works in schools, came back and really focused on equity within our school district to make sure that we're reducing those opportunities. So they've really put the foundation in place that we continue as a school district to focus on diversion. And I think it's important to know that anytime that SROs are involved in a school police situation, that does not mean that the school is purposely charging out a student for the purpose of adding to their criminal record. Our school administrators are very well aware of those top 5 infractions that Sergeant Jacobs had alluded to that might result in a diversion process. And sometimes the SRO is a tool to help the school administrator in that process. So I think as board members, it's important to understand that there's a lot of narrative around the roles of the SROs and their functions in schools as well. But I don't think that our district necessarily falls into some of those traps or some of those problems that's created some of those equity concerns. Now, there's obviously areas of opportunities and growth, and that's we continue to work on that. Sergeant Jacobson visits with both Bob and Missy almost, I think, every month, I believe, has very involved in our principals meetings as well. And so we have a great relationship with our SRO. So just wanted to kind of highlight that piece of the program because it is something that is working really well. And then one other thing I just wanted to share with the board is that we're probably a year into this, but we are going through just some significant scrutiny and looking at the SRO contract that we've had with Fargo Public Schools. It's been with us for a long period of time. So we have been working with both Tamra, Sergeant Jacobson, members from Fargo PD to make sure that we are really achieving the goals that we wanted to out of this program. And we're almost at a point to have a final contract. So we will share what some of those updates are with the Board of Education as well, because they've been really adaptive to making sure that as our dynamics change, as our community changes, they're really here for our students and not just to police our students, but really help everyone become the perfect citizens that we can.
Just wanted to reiterate to the board that we recognize and second that this isn't just about, holding kids accountable through a criminal police report. This is about wraparound services and that we bring additional resources to the table to really meet these kids and their families where they're at so that we can just help them be successful. And yes, do we deal with safety? Absolutely. But it's not just physical safety either. It's mental and emotional safety. And so oftentimes the things that we bring to the table have nothing to do with if writing a criminal report. We really educate and we love on these kids and we just want to see them successful and making good choices. And we are very blessed too as a police department because it's very rare, I think, across the US nowadays to be able to say we have such a positive relationship and such support from our building administration and the district office and from you guys as well. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Christy. As I think back to a couple of the sessions that I attended virtually at the National School Boards Association regarding SRO programs across the United States, the information that you've shared, and Dr. Gandhi, the information that you've talked about and the commitment to a continuous improvement effort within the program really helps to alleviate for me some of the concerns that others have shared with me and that I have sometimes had as a result of some things that I hear. So I look forward to just continuous improvement. And thank you too for your involvement with our board meetings and helping us to facilitate those where that is needed. And for this very, very thorough report, it helps to showcase so many positives that are going on within the school district with your help. Okay, Christy, feel free to stick around for the rest of the meeting if you would like. If you need to take off, we understand. Right now, we'll move on to the senior high exit surveys. And Travis Christensen, Todd Birch, and Troy Cody are on the agenda for that report.
Good evening, folks. So yes, my name is Travis Christensen, principal at North High School. Mr. Troy Cody at Davies High School and Dr. Todd Birch at South High School will join me today. We're going to walk you through a little bit of some high points from the senior exit survey presentation. So gathered last spring from our various sites. I'm going to share my screen here if we can. All right. I think everybody should have that view now. So again, as I mentioned, this is information really coming from South Davies, North, and Dakota High School seniors last spring as they volunteered kind of some information on what their plans are moving forward, what they're so looking forward and also looking back at their high school experience. And so really we're going to kind of hit a couple different areas. One is postgraduate plans self-reported by those senior respondents. Some information and feedback on student achievement and growth through their high school careers. and also some feedback on school culture and safety. So as we get rolling, I'll grab this screen here. Really, when we one of the questions that's always kind of interesting is what is their view and plans moving forward. So as you see here, really 70% of our respondents are at that point in time looking at a 4-year college as their next step. And if you look at that along with the 2-year VOC or tech school situation, it's upwards of 80% of our graduates last year are looking at some sort of continued education as they get closer then to their career path. Although we do have a handful of 3% that are looking to get in the military and about 6% looking to enter the workforce immediately after school. So, but it's still as kind of has been in past years, the vast majority are looking at that either 2 or 4 year college step after the high school graduation. We also are always interested about if they are looking at a college situation, whether it be 2-year or 4-year program, where do they plan to attend college? So it's about a 60-40 split from our 2021 graduates as far as in-state versus out-state. As we look at some of the institutions that they give us as far as where they're headed, NDSU, UND, MSUM, those local institutions obviously come across very consistently, but there's also spread out not only throughout the region, but throughout the nation. So we really are sending forth our graduates both locally and across the nation to 2-year and 4-year colleges. Similarly to that, those that have responded that they look to be in the workforce immediately next year, one of the things that's looked at is where do they anticipate that being? And so as you can see by the chart in front of you, close to 60% of those are looking to work here in Fargo. And you can see it varies from there of whether that's elsewhere in North Dakota, across the river in Minnesota, or in other locations. But again, the lion's share of those who are heading right off to the workforce are looking to do so right here in our own backyard. So with that, we're going to move on to student achievement and growth, and I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Birch to take that information.
Thanks, Mr. Christensen, and good evening, board. Slide 7 is the first one that will be shown for me, and we're asking students to share their response to whether or not that they feel academically challenged at the school in which they attend. 77%, that would be a combination of agree and strongly agree, indicate that they do feel challenged. And some reasons for that would be Fargo Schools offers a very rich curriculum in multiple areas. So we're very fortunate to be able to have students pursue paths that they're most interested in. A lot of want to classes after they get through the have to classes. Another feature of Fargo Schools is we have a wonderful distribution of courses from mini intervention programs, remedial type classes, all the way through AP and gifted programs. So the opportunity for students to be able to settle into a level of academic challenge for them is strongly supported in each of our high schools. The other piece that we would say is that we've got a strong approach with our teachers, the commitment and passion that they have as well to the courses that they teach. In the Fargo schools, you've often heard that we are working on supporting a guaranteed and viable curriculum in which we've identified the learning targets, a lot of collaboration through PLCs to be able to ensure that no matter what school a student attends, they will be receiving the same information. The other thing too is that we've been fortunate to have lots of wraparound services. This past year with ESSER dollars, we've been able to add supports such as student success advisors and academic interventionists. So the opportunity to be able to recognize students who need some intervention early are able to receive those supports in which they are helped to be able to ensure that they have success. Then I think the last one in this slide is an adherence to graduation requirements. Counselors do a wonderful job of making sure that we have students on track to graduate, and they're doing so in a way that works with a 4-year rolling plan from grade 9. The next slide, my teachers expect me to do my best. Very impressive, 94% agree or strongly agree with the students responding. And this is an emphasis throughout each of our high schools for teachers to make positive connections. Each of our buildings has unique programs that reward students for effort, for accomplishments, and for involvement. And the more that we can reinforce students, the better they're going to perform. Another thing that we pride ourselves in each building is that we create a very safe learning environment for our students. And as a result, students are not afraid to make mistakes. Those mistakes are used as motivators rather than being punitive. And we're emphasizing a whole lot more practice, followed by feedback, followed by more practice, to be able to ensure that the teachers are understanding student needs as well as outcomes. Teachers do a great deal of modeling the work as well. The approach of I do, we do, you do is a nice model which reinforces and recognizes the opportunity for students to know, to see before they have the experience of knowing what it is in which they are asked to do. At the high school level, we also have time in the morning now. Each week, there is about 35, 40 minutes in which teachers either have PLC time or student intervention time. Spartan period, Eagle Hour, and what we call at South High School, BAM, Bruins Achieving More, is opposites. They're PLCs in which we invite students to come into classrooms in the morning to be able to receive assistance. So a lot of ways in which our teachers do their best to make sure that we're connecting with students. Next slide, I feel I am learning what is being taught in my classes. 83% are reporting, once again, agree or strongly agree. And a great deal of this category has to do with feedback. The formative assessments in which goes to that practice piece is huge once again. We're doing a great job with ensuring that students know what it is that's expected of them through a daily planner. And now we're growing with Canvas as our new learning management system. Our teachers also have gotten much better at stating objectives, providing a question for the day, and then following up at the end of the period with an exit ticket, which will provide feedback for the teacher as to whether or not they were successful, the students were successful, and where they need to be able to start the next period. Another piece with this is application. In the past, perhaps, students were asked to be able to sit, memorize, and regurgitate, and no longer is that the case. A great deal more now has to do with application, and as a result of that, they are having to demonstrate their learning in multiple ways. So a lot more engagement as a result of what is being taught in classes. And I think the other part there should be is also what's being learned. The other focus that we're working on with Fargo schools is doing a much better job with rubrics and scales. And these indicators help share what exactly is to be learned and identify specific information within a unit. So much more communication as a result of information and feedback throughout that unit. Next slide, I feel my teachers utilize technology for instruction. Again, strongly agree is 84%. And I think the word technology really comes down to two things. It comes down to engagement as well as communication in terms of what we use for technology. Oftentimes we think technology has to do with this PLD or personal learning device. And I'll say, thankfully, we had all these devices in our hands before we went to distance learning last March, which made our transition certainly much easier. But we have so many examples in the Fargo schools with technology, from vocational, career tech ed, science, the mathematics of graphing calculators and math manipulatives, art, facts. If any of you have ever had a student in childcare, there's the baby think-it-overs that are taken home for the weekend, and our students actually have to care for a child that cries, that wets themselves, that needs food, and it's a very real simulation of having a child. And of course, the last technology that's still probably the favorite is the old pencil and paper yet. That is still a very good tool to be able to help with engagement as well as communication. The last slide that I have is I feel I have developed independent learning skills. 91% of our students once again have indicated that they agree or strongly agree with that statement. As freshmen, we're certainly seeing more need to be able to help them navigate through some of their responsibilities. However, as seniors, there's that release of responsibility that we're happy to see, that no longer do we have to provide as much support or need to tell them, to show them what exactly is needed. We empower students to make decisions and also be accountable for their own decisions. We have career academic advisors and counselors to be able to help navigate the course selections they need to be able to help prepare them for life after high school. We are continually working on developing not only the academic, but the emotional and social development as well. And lastly, help students become choice ready. Choice ready certainly is a marker within our state, which indicates how is it that we can help students prepare for a post-secondary, a workforce, or a military background. So once again, very happy to see that students are developing these skills as they enter our schools and leave for graduation. So Mr. Cody, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Certainly the opportunity to share our survey data with you is exciting. I appreciate our newest high school principal, Travis Christensen, for raising his hand and saying that he would put this together. So I wanted to make sure that he knew that we appreciated that. Dr. Birch and I appreciated him voluntold that he'd be putting that together. Todd knows that his age and experience, he now with Andy gone, he has kind of the swing vote on that. So that's good too. This might be the 5th or the 6th year that we've given this report to the board from our senior surveys. You know, and just to be very honest, a quick analysis of each year's data would indicate that the numbers really are not deviating a whole lot from previous years. The survey is 75 questions in total. We have maybe considered looking at collecting data in a little different fashion. The spring year of every senior year, asking them to answer 75 questions about their high school experiences sometimes is quite challenging to get them to answer that. So certainly I get to speak on the positive school culture and safety. And I would say that, you know, given the hybrid model that we had last year in the midst of a pandemic, there is certainly not a lot of deviation from previous years. And we worked from the north to the south. It definitely didn't save the best for last in this presentation. So my first slide, 13 there, Travis, is really, I really would want to just reiterate Todd's point that we all three of our buildings, including our newest Dakota, really have unique, I would say, strategies in terms of how do we make connections with kids. And it is the foundation of everything that all of our school is about, is knowing that a strong foundation and a relationship with a student is critical. And so this particular slide, 84% are reporting that 2 or more adults know them well in the building. I would tell you this, is that in the midst of what we experienced last year, that's extremely encouraging to me. Yet we acknowledge that there's work to do with those 8% that are reporting that they just didn't make a connection with an adult. We all continue to promote relationship building and understand that the important role that plays in our school, and really truly know that it is the foundation of all learning. I would also at this time like to give a quick shout out to all of our support staff. It starts in the morning with our bus drivers and our cooks and our custodians and our office staff and our paraprofessionals, because I am absolutely confident that they are also represented in those numbers. Please note that it says adults in our building and not necessarily a teacher. And so when we talk about a positive school culture and the number of adults that know them well, we really want to really give a quick shout out to everybody, not just necessarily our teachers. It's pretty amazing that nearly 20% of our seniors, if you think about that, are reporting that 4 to 5 adults know them well. And it all starts by knowing their names and in investing and in expressing interest in each and every one of those kids. Our next slide, slide 14, talks about and asks the question, my teachers care about me. Over 90% agree or strongly agree with this statement. As we all know, caring about someone is being honest with them and oftentimes telling them their hard truths, holding true to deadlines and commitments, or having to administer penalties and consequences for actions. These actions and decisions may often appear to be as not caring, as we all know as parents in some cases. But we are certainly constantly helping both students and staff understand the importance of both sides of this particular equation. The next slide, slide 15, is answering or asking the question. Travis, when you get to it. I feel my teachers treat me with respect. One thing that is extremely critical when helping to establish an environment of positive culture and safety is the word respect. This is something taught and worked on as early as elementary school. We know that we've heard it quite a bit in our elementary schools. When I've been in elementary schools, you can see signs posted in the hallways and keeping your hands to yourself and some of those basic comments and teaching. This is really something that really we think about. We keeping our hands to ourselves and respecting each other's property and space go a long way. Listening and understanding each other's perspective help in earning respect. 93% of our seniors reported that their teachers respect them. The next slide. This slide indicates as we move from the teachers to the administration that there's a slight decrease in that response. I think we all in administration and in leadership roles often understand that the individuals that we have to confront at times or deal with student attendance issues or classroom behavior issues or end up administering those consequences, they don't enjoy being involved in that. Analyzing data such as this always is a great reminder that we still need to be aware of students, their feelings, preserving their dignity, and even when confronting a student in any level of school violation. Slide 17. This slide represents how students feel their peers respect them. Other than constantly reminding students that respecting others is a skill beyond the four walls of school and helping them to process and mediate peer-to-peer conflict at times is an area that we continue to work with our students on. Respect, as we all know, looks so different to so many students, yet it is an area that we know is critical to the success that we all would have in any of our buildings. Our next slide talks about communicating our school policies. And our school policies is done at the beginning of every school year. All three of our comprehensive high schools have class meetings where we would put together all of our policy information, additional changes that have been made to some of those policies, and really do our very best to communicate those in our class meetings. It's communicated in our student handbooks and shared with our incoming 8th graders at parent-student orientations. Our policies are also referred to when having to deal with students when those policies are in violation. All of our policies are posted on our school websites. Each of our schools are consistently calibrating those expectations placed on students through phone calls and monthly admin meetings coordinated through Dr. Gross's office. We are often making phone calls to one another to ensure that there is consistency being applied across our buildings. Our next slide talks about schools feeling safe, students feeling safe at school. Generally speaking, the word safe could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Does this answer safe mean from an outside intruder or a threat? Does it mean from other students inside of the building? Or does it mean against the COVID virus? All in all, the number of students who disagreed slightly increased this year from previous years. The responses could be from a single incident that happened in the building to something they experienced personally outside of the school and that has carried over into our school. Yet we are here and have over 80% of our students, 4 out of every 5 students, feeling very safe inside of our schools. Travis, I think this is where I hand the baton back to you.
That's true. That's true. So the last 2 slides here really are looking at just some open-ended opportunities for our senior respondents to just give some information and some feedback on 2 questions. And one is really summed up in what could be done to improve your school. So there's things from the bottom up of temperature consistencies with just the physical plant size of each of our sites, right? And our climates, that can be a challenge at some times. And better food, I think as high school students, we probably all maybe made that request at some point in time. But I think that what the takeaway is for us as leaders is that really our students do desire a voice, and it's good to be reminded of that and continue to look for ways to work with our students, not just a student council or some sort of leadership group of that fashion, but really trying to work with kids in a lot of different capacities. And then I think what rings true, you heard it earlier from Sergeant Jacobson about really the focus and the desire for a focus from our students as well on mental health. And I think that's something that obviously we have heard consistently here over the last year to 2 years, and something I think that we're taking those first steps towards. She mentioned the Break the Silence video. I know that Fargo North High School, our Mental Health Matters Club, which is student initiated last year, works with a couple of our counselors, is actually holding an event currently at the Broadway Square downtown in Fargo, where they are screening that to the public. And again, just starting to get that conversation going to do just as that says, break the silence. And when the silence stops, the stigma ends is the hope. And then the last opportunity that was given to our respondents was really, what do they appreciate most about the school? And I kind of gathered what I would say is kind of the themes that carried throughout those responses. And if I'm to sum those up, I think what I'm looking at really is students feel school really is their school is a safe, welcoming, friendly place to be. That is about the people there, the connections that they're made. I think the other thing that stands out is I think that we should feel very good about in Fargo and continue really this effort is the wide range of academic and co-curricular activity options that we're able to provide our students is something that I think comes across pretty clearly when we have our students being ready to walk across that graduation stage and they talk about what's really impacted them positively. And then the last piece there on the bottom right to there is a quote that a response that stuck out to me really, because I think it encapsulates a lot of what other responses were stating, and also what I think we all hope our students leave us with, is that I appreciate how my teachers and support system at school didn't give up on me. And I think that's really the takeaway. And I think the driving force for myself and Mr. Cody and Dr. Birch and all of our staffs and all of our schools each day is to keep that quote from one of our graduates in 2021 really first and foremost in our minds. And even though there can be challenges each day, that's what we're hoping to do is not give up on kids and keep giving them an opportunity to grow and develop and be successful when they leave us as well. So again, I would I'll thank Mr. Cody and Dr. Birch for the opportunity here to put this together. So thank you for that learning moment. But at this point, again, I would echo just our thank you to the board for giving us this opportunity to talk through this presentation tonight. And if there are questions, we would entertain those at this time as well.
All right, thanks to all of you. I see one hand up from Dr. Newman. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you all three for being here, and thank you for this presentation. Thanks for all that you do in our buildings. I was chuckling to see that the better food comment has really not changed in over 20 years. I'm sure that was my sentiment as well. One of the slides from your presentation just really stuck out to me, and I wanted to comment on it. The slide about the number of adults knowing a student well, it is so important. As I am a former teacher myself, my mother was a principal, and now as a parent and a pediatrician, that data is so important, and those numbers were really, really impressive. I just wanted to share an anecdote that some districts do. If I think they put either pictures or names of every student in the building in the teacher's lounge, and it's called the DOT system. And any adult, doesn't have to be a teacher, any adult who knows that student well puts a dot by their name. And at the end, any student who doesn't have a dot, the school makes a concerted effort to reach out to them. So maybe that's a way to reach your 8% that felt not known by an adult. just wanted to share that. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. I don't see any other hands up, and we'll
Rebecca,
move on.
Jennifer's
Jennifer
hand.
does, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Jennifer,
That's
go ahead.
okay. That's okay. Thank you. I'm waving, but my mute button was on. Sorry. Okay. So my question, thank you both for sharing that information. I actually have two questions, if I might. How many students participate in this survey every year? And do you see the trends increasing or decreasing in terms of participation? And I know, Troy, you spoke specifically to looking at ways to maybe deploy it a little different, so it's not 75 questions all at once. Maybe that would help increase participation, but I am sort of curious what is being done right now to encourage students, or maybe you're incentivizing them in some way to participate. And then again, how many are participating? And then I have one follow-up after that.
Well, I can speak quickly for just because I was looking at this data as early as this afternoon. So last year, Davies had around 311 seniors graduate that participated in the ceremonies. And we had 200 and I believe 28 seniors that answered the survey, and we administer it. I'm not sure specifically how South and North are doing it, but we administer it in our senior English classes. And so those English teachers are referencing it. We send it to them in their Google accounts, and that's a kind of a newer way that we've done it before. Otherwise, we just threw it out carte blanche and gave them a couple weeks to answer that and made reference to it on student announcements and things of that nature. So that's specifically at my in my senior class. I'm not sure, Todd and Travis, if you know specifically the number that answered it for yours.
At South High, we follow the same format that Davies uses, is that we coordinate the survey through our senior English teachers. To answer your question, Jennifer, we see normally in that 2/3 to 3/4 of our senior class taking the responses and filling that survey out completely. No doubt about it is the timing of it sometimes isn't always the best at the end of the into their school time here, but nonetheless, we do appreciate, and I'm pretty confident that the individuals that do respond is quite reflective of the classes that are graduating here within the Fargo schools.
Jennifer, I would echo both of those statements as far as the mechanics. My understanding is that we have used that senior English classroom situation as well as where that's deployed and used. Looking specifically at last year, I know at North High School, our number of respondents was down. And as I dug into that a little bit preparing for this, it sounds like I think just the nature of last year just led to a point where our senior English teachers did not get that necessarily out as consistently as we have in the past and would like to, but as far as deployment mechanics, it would follow what Davies and South High School described.
Okay, thank you.
And real quick, Jennifer, if I could, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I also want to be very clear that our students are surveyed to death. And I guess I say that not because I'm critical of it, but I tell you, the diversity at Davies, it seems like we're always encompassed in every single survey out there. I know Bob has to twist arms, and I know he's quite honestly aware of my frustration and about how so I don't know if there's a better way to go about it. And I guess, I know Dr. Birch was pretty adamant about 2-3 years ago when we were asked to, from the board and our district level administration, to administer this. I guess I would just really maybe ask the board or even Dr. Gross and Dr. Gandhi to reflect on what specific data that the board is going to use, or even some of the data that we would use as building and level administrators. Because I don't know if you've sat through a 75 question survey your senior year in the spring, but I'm sure that it's going to be a little bit different. So, but just those are a couple quick comments as well too.
Well, kind of along that note, if I may, Troy, one of the survey sort of top 4 things that popped up here from the students was more student voice. So on that note, if, from through the lens of an administrator, you're giving lots of opportunity for surveys. Through the lens of a student, they're saying more student voice as a number 2 sort of suggestion. So my next question was going to be, do they have an opportunity to provide within this survey or other avenues to suggest what that might look like? I'll just leave it at that and see what you say.
Yeah, maybe that open comment section a little bit as well too. But I guess maybe this is a topic that maybe Dr. Gross and Dr. Gandhi and us as administrators can maybe look at, looking at it differently. I know, Todd, if you wanted to speak to your initial thoughts a few years ago, but to Tracy's point, I mean, that's data I want. I want to know our kids feeling like they're connected to my adults in the building. So there is really some meat and potatoes from this survey that I use. We just submitted our STARS report with the state that we collected a lot of this data from as well too. But yeah, maybe this is the time. And I know Jim has mentioned in the past too, that the data really doesn't deviate a whole lot one way or the other. But certainly maybe it's a time that we really sit down and think about what data specifically we as building leaders and the board and district level administrators want to collect.
Well, I think you absolutely asked a very important question, and that goes back to what's the purpose, right? And you just gave a great example of what, that is a very valuable piece of information that you want to continue to monitor, right? And make sure that you're fulfilling the needs there. So if student voice is the other thing, then to your point, what does that look like as far as opportunity? So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Robin.
Thank you. So when is the YRBS, which grades are the YRBS surveys taken, the youth risk behavior surveys? That is a very respected survey done nationally. How is that different from the senior exit survey?
So
go ahead, Bob.
So that report or that survey is issued on a every other year basis. We do middle school and high school students. The types of questions are different than the questions or the data that was just shared with you this evening. There it's more focusing on, as the name suggests, what are those risk factors that our students are exposed to, involved with, and so on. Although there are some similarities, I think what the data that was just shared with you right now is looking at more about the inner workings of the school and some of those long-term aspirations that our students have when they leave us as our system.
Does that take care of your question, Robin?
It did. Thank you.
Okay. And I did note the CEA committee. I know we have a meeting coming up of that committee fairly soon. I don't know if we'd get this topic on that agenda, but Nikki as CEA committee chair, communications and engagement and advocacy, maybe that's something just to add on our list for brainstorming in terms of student involvement. And we've certainly heard from more than one group the need to pay more attention on the mental health end. So Dr. Gandhi, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'll make it quick because it's somewhat germane to the topic, but not totally. But I think just to capitalize on something that Troy said, as administration, oftentimes we're carrying out board reports. And we obviously go through everything that's going to be on a board meeting agenda through our governance process as well. But oftentimes these reports are at the request of the board and the data that we collect as well. We are always going to work from the mindset that if the board doesn't tell us otherwise, you expect that data in perpetuity on an annual basis. So sometimes it might be worth revisiting some of those requests I made 4 years ago or 5 years ago to see, do we still need it at that same level, or have the conditions changed? If not, administration is just going to continue to present the board reports and collect the data as well. And obviously we want data that's meaningful and impacts school decisions, but we also don't want our students taking a 75 question survey if we're not going to use that data in a meaningful way.
Points well taken, Dr. Gandhi.
And remember, I'm supposed to put the report together next year. So if you make a decision, I won't argue with it.
You want to be the first to know? Is that it? You never know. We might expand it. So, okay. Thank you, all three of you very much for your time tonight. and the preparation on putting that together. Are we all right to move on to the summer school report? I said we would be waiting until the end of all reports to take a break. All right, let's go on then to the summer school report. David Berkman and Rebecca Folden are joining us.
All right, good evening, school board and superintendents. Right now, I'm not able to unmute my video, so it says the host has stopped my video, so I will be needing video to do a screen share, whoever that host might be.
Are we able to get some help, technical help from?
There we go.
From Bill. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, I'd like to start with a few shout outs. My name is David Berkman. I am part of the summer school admin team, and everybody who presents tonight, we all have multiple other hats that we wear, and we put on our summer school hats to try to provide the best programming possible across the whole city. So a few shout outs. First one to school board. It is always appreciated your summer school picnic that you do for the staff who are on during the summertime celebration that was held at South this year. I'd like to add the superintendents to the school board saying congratulations. On the second page of the board report, we had 2,768 successful academic course completions. So 2,768 successful academic seats. In addition to that, we had fine arts with Trollwood and sports camps. That's a whole lot of opportunity for students. So do feel good about the quality of programming that we are able to provide in the summertime. Next shout out goes to our superintendents. It's been especially tricky in building summer school constructs. We're done by December, and we go to print, we hire, et cetera, and during the COVID season, if you're thinking back to where we were at December of last year, where we're finalized, we had to work very closely with both our superintendents as well as the state to decide what type of programming we might be able to offer. So we do appreciate the collaboration with our superintendents with that. Special thanks to Artie Heath. She's our summer school admin assistant who assembled the board reports that you get each summer. And my final piece is a special shout out to Becky Folden and Alice Wimkin. They are completing their last year in summer school. And I know for Becky, it's been a decade or longer, and Alice is close to a decade. That's a lot of years to contribute your time and talent during the summertime. So a big shout out to them. Before I pass it over to Becky, the high school principals had mentioned Choice Ready, and we had some innovation this year in the high school summer school in terms of online courses, and just celebrating that taking an online course is actually one of the Choice Ready essential elements, if you will. And our summer school high school program was able to offer that virtual experience, which we did have a lot of success with. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Becky, and I'm going to start driving from the summer school report. So Becky, passing it over to you, and if you would tell me where you'd like me to drive.
Sure. So I'm Becky Folden. My day job is the principal at Claire Barton Hawthorne. And then for the past 21 years, I have worked summer school, 9 years as a teacher and 13 years as the director. So this is, and actually it's even been longer than that. I have to laugh because while I was going through college, I was a para in summer school. So this is like 25 years for me. I've been doing summer school, and this will be my first upcoming summer since I was 16 years old with a few weeks off. So I am super excited for summer 2022. So in the board report, you'll see that the first page just has the table of contents. There's a little summary page on page 2. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the third page of the report. And the first program that I'm going to talk about is Transition Summer School. Transition summer schools are a remedial program for our students who are struggling in math and reading. This is for any kiddo that meets the criteria. So there are three options. You can do a reading only, a math only, or the combo. They're 8 to noon regardless. If you do the combo, we just split up those 4 hours, 2 hours of math, 2 hours of reading. Below that is all kinds of criteria that allows a student to qualify for summer school. There are a variety of ways our students can qualify, and that's good because we want to give them lots of different options if they need support. So those are all the different qualifying criteria that our teachers use to qualify. If you go down to page 4, you will see that we had a variety of things happening. We had HMR students attending Roosevelt, CBH students attending Clara Barton. We did have 2 schools that were closed this year. Students who have just finished grades K through 5 are eligible for this. This is free for our students and funded through the state. Students can choose to attend any school they want. Transportation is provided by the parents. So if a parent is going across town for a daycare, they can certainly attend a different school than they normally do during the school year. If they're going to Boys and Girls Club at a different school in the summer, they can certainly do that. So we have students who come from many of our area private schools, and then we do have out-of-state students who may have one parent with a Fargo address that they're staying with in the summer, so they also qualify. So if you look there, you'll see the school or all the different elementary schools that were open this summer. We start registering kids for summer school in the end of February, beginning of March, all the way through that last day of school. So you can see Bennett had 81 students registered. By the time summer school started, only 67 actually attended. Centennial had 84 with 62 actually attending. So we tend to lose students before those first days, partly because summer school plans change, people have moved. So it is a little bit tricky to figure out staffing for summer school because we started with 924 students and ended up with 663. But again, these are all students who receive supports in math and reading in the summer. And again, this was a 3-week program from 8 to noon in July. After the 4th of July, they had the last 3 weeks. The next program that I run is elementary enrichment. Enrichment are the fun classes that sometimes we just don't have as much time for anymore during the school year. And so these are 3 weeks in June. Any student can attend. Doesn't matter if you have a Fargo address. So any student, West Fargo, Moorhead, private schools, kiddos coming to stay with a cousin for a few weeks, doesn't matter. Anybody can attend. The courses are $75 and it's for students in grades 3 through 5. And so if you just scroll down, we had a large variety: Latin, writer's workshop, experience Christmas around the world. These are all the different courses as he's scrolling down that our students could pick from. And what we do is in December, I usually send out an email to teachers in the district and ask them for a passion that they might have that they would want to teach in the summer. And they submit a course option. And then we go through those and pick the courses we're going to offer. This was at Hawthorne this summer. We had 220 students registered for enrichment summer school, and out of those 215 actually attended. And it's just so much fun. The kids, this is right after school. School was done on Thursday. This starts Monday. But these kiddos were super excited to get right back to school and start some of these areas. And they're small classes, and the kids just had a really great time with this. So, and it's really also a fun idea because we have not a lot, but we do have some of our high school teachers coming down to the elementary to teach our elementary kids. So they get a little bit new of a perspective during summer. So those are the 2 programs that I run. Any questions for me?
I don't have a question. I have a continuous comment, and that has to do with transportation for the transitions school. After serving on the board for 7 years and seeing those numbers. And I understand some of the reasons for the drop off in terms of, the registration and then who ends up showing up. But I'm just encouraging us to continue to explore that, considering that's a program, especially where it's recommended that the students attend based on need, really. And yeah, I would hope that we could, if we're not doing it already, delve into, just as a suggestion, not a direction, but a suggestion, some of the reasons, maybe in addition to transportation, and also in addition to, hey, our plans changed for the summer. We thought we'd be able to, we thought we'd be free and now we're not. If there's anything else that we potentially might need to be looking into, because it's clear that the students are recommended for the program based on need of their instructors. So thank you though for the report. All right, moving on.
Yep, moving on. Becky, with as much fun as you said it was doing summer school, are you sure you're not going to be missing us next summer?
I'm going to be relaxing for the first time since I was 16. I'm so excited. And I'm far from 16 years old, so it's earned.
Very good. Thank you, Becky. Next speaker is Jim Keel talking about high school summer school. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, David. Jim Keel. I am the assistant principal at Dakota High School as a day job, and I also supervise the counseling program for the district. There are 41 counselors in the district, so it keeps me hopping. My summer gig is the secondary level summer school programming. David and I work very closely on those items. The goals, again, as usual, were to provide students with lots of opportunity, access to regular coursework, enrichment coursework, opportunities to earn credit, opportunities to participate in athletics and fine arts. So lots of opportunity. Based on trying to plan in December, we were wrestled with lots of issues, trying to make sure that we were allowing and providing access for students. So some of the problem solving that we did included expanding the bus routes. Historically, we've run 2 routes, one way south to Davies and one up to north, so that students could access the in-person classes at South High. Adding 2 additional bus routes, 8 extra stops, trying to reel students in from all corners of the city. It made a huge difference in terms of students being able to access the in-person opportunity at South High. Another solution was that we looked at offering the in-person as a hybrid. So students would attend in-person for a chunk of time at South High, Monday through Thursday. And then the hybrid was Friday, which was a virtual asynchronous opportunity. So students would be able to reach out to their instructor, but would not be having to be on campus. Another very popular option was the 100% virtual. The virtual was synchronous, however, so a student had to make the commitment to be live on Zoom for an hour and a half, 5 days a week. So the students and the instructor had direct access to each other 5 days a week during the course of the course. So that was another opportunity as well. In terms of survey responses, asking students, what delivery format did you attend? And one of the reasons I pulled this out was the yellow sliver. We were fairly evenly split in terms of number of students finishing virtual and number of students finishing hybrid, but there were students who chose to do both. And the reasons for that, maybe they could be on campus for one class, but not another class. Maybe they preferred to do their FIED as a virtual opportunity. So the students really appreciated having the access and the flexibility of hybrid and or virtual. In terms of learning, historically, the on-campus classes at South High were 4.5 hours long. The mega super block, if you will. I think this is my 10th year with summer school, and I got very used to watching zombies leave South High after 4.5 hours of instruction, and the teachers didn't look much better, honestly. But By having hybrid opportunities, we were able to adjust the lengths of the class meetings. The hybrid on campus was a 2.5-hour block, which students very positively responded to, which is the about right. And then the virtual classes we've learned as well. There's a limit to how long a teenager is happy or willing or able to Zoom. If you exceed an hour and a half, you very rapidly lose them, no matter what kind of gymnastics you're doing as an instructor. So the feedback from the students was very valuable on that. Asking the staff about what is an appropriate time for class meetings in a synchronous Zoom. They lean in that 1.5 to 2 hour range as well. So we're still trying to find that sweet spot. We think it's somewhere in that 1.5 to 2 hours. There's a listing of the courses that were offered, the academic courses for credit. On that list, I will highlight the highway safety was not offered as a virtual course. All the students who are accessing the highway safety also access behind the wheel. So they are sitting in a car with another student and their instructor. The schedule just would not allow for our instructors to do virtual and hybrid and driving. And honestly, the availability of those instructors for driver's ed is the limiting factor, how many students are able to access that class. We did offer PE as a virtual format as well. One nice feature of the virtual class is that it's not location dependent. So we were able to have students from all corners of the city again access the virtual Phi-Ed class. We also made the on-campus opportunities available. Students access to them in about equal numbers. Another piece of our puzzle is the athletic camps. We do offer to facilitate the summer sports camps for coaches. They do have other options as well. So they can use our registration process, our payroll process. Many coaches really appreciate that. Some of them choose to do their own camp with or without fees. And then in some cases, like Davies this year, chose to do their own process. So our numbers for athletic camps look down, but they don't include a large chunk of what we know happened. So these are the camps that were offered through the summer school programming. So are there any questions about the high school offerings in the academic or sports camp side?
I don't
Okay,
see any questions.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks. Let's see here. Does that conclude the report or do we have more?
We have
Jennifer?
a few
Thank you.
first here. Erin Kaluzan Middle School.
Okay, Jennifer, could we just hold
Yes.
off on that question until the end?
Sure. Yes, that's
Okay.
fine.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name's Erin Kaluza. During the regular school year, I am an instructional coach at Ed Clapp Elementary. And in the summertime, I run the middle school programming. There are some numbers you can look at. If you scroll down just a little bit, David, it gives overall. This year, I expanded the program from a 1-semester program to a 2-semester program. So enrollment has stayed steady and in many cases increased when it comes to the reading and math courses. Science and social studies were offered again to any interested student. I have benefited from some of the work that Jim and David have done on the secondary level. The increased transportation opportunities has definitely been benefited middle school because they looped my students in to the transportation opportunities. Jim and David have also worked to prioritize the academic offerings for the morning and then the sports and other enrichment opportunities for the afternoon. So as a result, I was able to support students in getting them their academic boost or enrichment, and then they would head off from my program to sports camps. So enrollment has continued to grow at the middle school level. Some next steps that I'm looking at are the middle school principals are incredibly supportive during the summer, and they work hard with their teams during the school year to keep enrollment coming my direction. I've been having conversation with them about possibly moving to one site that would be transportation dependent. but we might be able to capitalize even more and expand even more some of the offerings and support services we would be able to give to the middle schools. I am also still contemplating and working with middle school administrators on determining if we would continue the 2-semester option. So those would be some next steps that I have for my programming. I too give an engagement survey, which looks very similar to last year's data. Middle school summer school is not a 4-credit option. Middle school in general is not for credit. So we don't do credit recovery or credit advancement in middle school. So we really are just trying to increase student engagement in school and set students up to be even more successful once their new school year starts in the fall. Many of the students may not have a choice in whether or not they attend summer school. It may be a family decision. So I sometimes have some reluctant learners, but the data is continuing to tell me that even though these are students who aren't exactly excited to be enrolled in summer school, they find it valuable. And more importantly, they find that it's preparing them for school to start the next year. So I'm happy to see that that engagement data is staying consistent. Any questions regarding middle school, summer school?
Let's see if there are others that are continuing on with the report. If we could finish that out, and then we'll come back to questions if board members have any.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up is the EL program. Lori Nappy has a 1-minute and 4-second video that I will link us to here. And a picture's worth 1,000 words. She's got some great video clips with it. And that isn't working at the moment. So rather than wait to see if it will load, I will try to get off the screen.
Hello, my name is Lori Nappy, and I support English Language Development Summer School, which took place in person at Agassiz.
David, we could hear it, but we can't see it.
Fridays. Nutrition services provided breakfast, lunch, and meals to take home. Students had library services twice weekly in person and one time via Friday Zoom. Teachers went to great lengths to make the new location comfortable for our students. Mrs. Krabanoff's third graders enjoyed lots of community visitors. Mrs. O'Leary and Mrs. Hoy Thompson are reading recovery teachers during the school year and enjoy team teaching kindergarten in the summer. Their combined class of 30 students had 15 students reading below grade level at an A or AA. All of their students made gains, with 8 of those 15 children reaching end of kindergarten grade level reading, which is a D. We had a bunch of fun, learned a great deal, and grew a lot this summer. Thank you.
All right, anything you would add, Lori? I saw the video, unfortunately, and nobody else was able to see it.
That's okay.
All right, briefly sharing, Alice Wimkin had to step out. Alice Wimkin had to step out, so I will briefly cover ESY. You can see Lori's numbers on page 13 for the K-5 EL program at Agassiz. For extended school year, I will post the numbers that Alice had, congratulating her on several years of doing ESY. And for innovations, she was very glad that 2 positive behavior interventionist positions were added this year, and she remarked that they were very impactful in what they were able to provide. And then passing it over to our last summer school presenter, Jennifer Free is going to talk about the Adult Learning Center. The bit on Trollwood that is included, Kathy Anderson will be visiting with you all at a later board meeting to review Trollwood numbers for the summer. Jennifer, ALC.
All right, good evening. Thank you for having us. Unlike my colleagues, my school year job is my summer job, and so I get the privilege of being the coordinator of adult education in the Even Start Family Literacy Program. As you'll see from our numbers, 2021 was far better than our virtual learning of 2020, and we were excited to have a little over 100 more students in our programming. We continued with that real hybrid learning option. So we had students on site, we had both synchronous and asynchronous learning happening. And so our teachers were piloting Zoom classrooms that we are now continuing on into this school year session. And then we have a component of students that don't have access. The digital divide in adult education is pretty big. And so we met students really where they were at and provided phone-based and print-based support for those that didn't have access to technology. Similar with our Even Start kiddos, we were able to provide programming through both that asynchronous and synchronous model, and had some kids that were virtual. All of our Even Start kids are back on site this year, and so we're excited to have all of those little faces in our program again. And really, you can see the numbers where we're sitting and kind of know where the last couple of summers have been. And I just want to thank you for all of your support for both adult education and the Even Start Family Literacy Program.
Thank you, Jennifer. And then turning it back to Rebecca for any questions. And while you're asking, I will post up the final page of the report, which has our summative numbers through the years.
Great. Thanks to all of you involved. Jennifer, I know you had your hand up. Jennifer.
Thank
Benson.
you. Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, I did. And my question is related to, so Rebecca, you had mentioned that plans for next summer are typically due by December. So, so decisions are made by then. My question is related to the academic losses that we know occurred during last year for students. How has that then, what is that plan looking forward within the next few months? Will that also have to be developed, and will that dramatically change what summer school looks like next year for kids?
The plan that starts in December is for enrichment summer school, where we ask teachers to submit. Those are those fun classes. That is not the math and reading portion. That we looked at their during their winter conference, or their spring conference, excuse me, in February, March. We start having those conversations with parents. So it doesn't really change programming. It just, we look to see at that time who meets the criteria in order to qualify for this. And then as students are registering for that, of course, we try to match them and individualize learning as much as possible. The state keeps us as less than 15 in a classroom. Really, it's about 10 in a classroom, which really allows that individualized instruction for the areas they need.
And so if I may ask a follow-up then, Rebecca, would it then be, would it be safe to say there's going to be an increased need, right? If there's 10 to 15 in a classroom, how many more kiddos, you know, are going to need, based on projections today, what we know, going to need additional summer school opportunities?
Well, and if you look at our numbers, just even on the screen, last year we had 470 students attend. In 2019, we had 501. So this year we were still high. We were 663. However, we had that 924 registered. That's the highest number that we have had since I've taken over. So we knew the need was there right from the start. And that's not the students that were just recommended. Those are the ones who actually registered. So that number is even significantly higher if we would take into account all of the teachers that had recommended kids that couldn't attend. So there is a need, and I'm going to be honest, it was really difficult to find enough teachers this year for the needs that we had, because our students really wanted to take advantage of this opportunity.
Right, right.
Any other questions on,
Thank you,
on the report overall? All right. Thanks to all of you involved again in the report. Board members, will move on to the FEA report. Is Scott Hansen joining us? I was told Scott Hansen would be here from the FEA.
Rebecca, I don't think we have anyone here at the meeting from the FEA for a report tonight.
All right, we'll move on then. Dr. Gandhi to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'll just share two quick things in the report, and I'll try to be quick for the purposes of time. But first off, just wanted to let the board members know that today was the first day of instruction at the Explorer Academy. Although it is a product of construction during COVID, there will be some things that we'll continue to work on. It was exciting to be able to have students in the building today and start the school year for them. So we are really excited about that. We will be celebrating the program there down the road, information forthcoming, but really just kind of wanted to acknowledge the start of the school year for our students at the Explorer Academy and the start of that program today. Secondly, for those of you that have been noticing maybe a new person that's at our virtual dais here today in the Brady Bunch boxes, our district council, Tara Bradner, has started in her role with Fargo Public Schools. She, as most of you know, will be participating at all board meetings and most of the board committee meetings as well. So hopefully you have the opportunity to visit with her, but that is Tara. She's in the box that says Tara. So there you go.
All right, it is 7:25. There is going to be a 5-minute break. So let's be back at 7:30, please. All right. Are we all back? It looks like it. Okay, it is 7:31 and we're moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
And a second?
Second,
And who made the second?
Tracy.
All right, thank you. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All right, motion passes. On to business. The first item is the operational plan memo 32. Dr. Gandhi, would you like to introduce that item?
Sure. Every year, administration presents our scope of work, which is our operational plan, which is created with input from all of our departments through cabinet. It is directly aligned to our strategic plan and also the three focus areas that are in that we are expected to do through Advanced Ed or Cognia, which is our accreditation system. At the last board meeting, the operational plan was presented to the board to provide any feedback or any changes. We have not heard any feedback, so we present the operational plan as is for this school year.
Is there a motion for approval of the operational plan for 2021-22?
Rebecca? Yeah, I move that we accept the 2021-22 operational plan as provided in memo 32.
Is there a second?
Second.
And who seconded, please?
I did, Seth.
Seth, thank you. I'm not seeing everyone all at the same time. So is there any discussion? All right, I
Rebecca,
don't.
sorry.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. So in terms of suggestion or discussion, Rupak, and I guess I've commented on this one before, but specifically around the, you link it to the strategic plan, but is there an opportunity to also link the operational plan to the audit itself and the improvement priorities that are being implemented and monitored? And then I guess in addition to that, progress being made towards those priorities. Is there a way to include that type of information?
Are you talking about what was from Cognia?
Yes.
Yeah, so actually each action item in our operational plan, as you go through the documents, is also aligned to a Cognia indicator because they evaluate several different standards. So yes, the specific areas that they talked about over our next 5 years that they want us to do, and that we had recognized, I think some around professional development, some of that piece is already incorporated within the operational plan, but it's going to be aligned to a standard that they evaluate as part of their accreditation process.
Right. So if I understand what you're saying, it's aligned to your standard or your strategic initiative, right? Not necessarily a link to their comments around that improvement priority itself and then monitored progress.
Their comments, I will go ahead and screen share here. If you can see their comments and their feedback are aligned to a set of standards on how what they evaluate when they go through our accreditation process. Those are called Cognia indicators. So we actually both include in our operational plan ties to our strategic initiatives, but we also include which Cognia indicator and we link it for you to take a look at. So what each action item that we're conducting, how it's tied to the Cognia standards that we are evaluated on or accredited on.
Yeah, so I did that and I guess I just it was only opening to the strategic plan. So maybe I just wasn't clicking the right area to get me to Cognia. That's what I wanted to see.
And you can reach out to even Bob Messieri if you'd want, but the Cognia indicators are different than the strategic plan indicators.
Right.
And we're trying to include the link to both. So you can
Yes. And that was exactly where I was going with that, is I could only get the strategic plan to come up. Might be user error, but that's where I was going with that, is can we link it to also the Cognia plan? But then I guess, so thank you for answering that, clarifying that. The second question would be, I know that you monitor progress of those then initiatives on your end. Could it be somehow that progress shared in another way versus, the one or two, however often we schedule that in right now? Can we see the progress to those specific without, I know you can go get it, from whatever is posted online, but more of a dialogue conversation, what's working, what's not. Because some of those I feel like we see from the last audit to this audit. And you know what I mean? Some we make progress on, others maybe not so much, but that's not really a dialogue that comes to us, right? As a report.
I think it does. So I think there's two conversations I had. One is, so if we're talking about progress on the operational plan, so that goes through 2 readings of the board. Once approved, that's our scope of work for this year. But then every May, we provide, or at the end of every year, we provide an update in writing to the board of our operational plan from the prior year, whether the actions were completed, whether they're ongoing, if they're multi-year projects, or if for some reason something couldn't happen. For example, a global pandemic happens, then we address that as well. So that is in schedule and provided to the board at the end of every year. If you're talking specifically about the accreditation process for Cognia, that happens formally as a district once every 5 years. Those recommendations, they too take 5 years to work on, and those are systems that we're improving in the district. However, on an annual basis, we do our own internal Cognia review. We pick 5 campuses, we tie it to the feedback that they gave us. That is also scheduled as a board report, and you hear from those schools on every year as well. So that is your opportunity then to say, okay, what have we done since our last Cognia report, and then what do we do? So we do an in-house annual report based on our 5-year accreditation cycle.
I'm going to see, I'm going to give other board members here and see if there's an opportunity for any other questions from board members. Okay, it doesn't look like it. I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Gandhi mentioned, is that there hasn't been, we have had the first reading of this, and there has not been additional questions or comments for changes. So what we have in front of us is the potential approval of the plan. Certainly there can be discussion, I think, at another date regarding other information or intricacies of the plan, perhaps. So tonight we need to decide on approving that plan or not.
So Rebecca, if I may just make an ending comment, where I'm going with that is I understand the reports are being given as Rupak highlighted. However, progress being made this year, right, noted that it was, but we don't talk about, for example, specifically the learning loss, the email that Kirsten sent out to boards and said, these are things that boards should be talking about and monitoring at an ongoing basis, and seeing like, where are we at more often with those numbers. I mean, because if you notice at the last meeting, the slide went back to 2016 and we were declining in certain areas, now increasing in others. I don't want to not acknowledge the things that are moving in the right direction, but I am saying whatever those targets are, they have them internally, but something's not, if we're seeing consistent declines, there's something the board needs to do differently in order to have sort of a trigger or a pulse on why. Oops, I can't hear you.
Oh, there we go.
There.
Thank you, Jennifer. Robin, you had your hand up, and then Dr. Gandhi.
I very much appreciate and respect our professional educators' efforts here. So in that in that vein, I want to recommend that the 21-22 operational plan be approved as provided.
Thank
We
you,
already
Robin.
have a motion on, we already have a motion on the floor.
It's just discussion. That's it. That's all. I just making a suggestion.
Thank you, Robin. Dr. Gandhi?
Yeah, Jennifer, I think I agree with your comments. We should be monitoring student achievement. That was part of our staff report to the board last year, and I think that's kind of a function of governance. I think there might be a little bit of a misunderstanding in what the operational plan is and what the Cognia accreditation plan is. They're not tied to measures of student achievement. They're evaluating based on those different indicators in Cognia. So I think all three of those things are being, we have a scheduled process to provide reports and progress monitored those through the board. So I fully agree with you that those conversations need to happen. I feel like they are, but if they're not, I would say work with Rebecca or myself or whatever we need to do to get that information to the board. I just don't see where that tie is to the current operational plan.
The teaching and learning, I guess, would be an example.
Okay, any other discussion, questions regarding the motion? All right, Anne Marie, would you please call the roll?
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
President Knudsen.
Yes, motion passes. Item B is a postponed motion from the August 24th meeting. It's memo 33. It comes from me. There's a motion that, well, the motion is on the memo, and that was to approve the contract amounts based on the 2020-21 teacher salary schedule that have been issued to newly hired teachers. So that motion is still live, right, Anne Marie?
Yes, discussion can resume because it is a special order of this business section tonight.
Yes. Is there any discussion on that motion? Jim, and then Rupak.
Yeah, I would recommend, based on the opinion that we got from our attorney, that we just ignore this tabled motion, let it die on the floor, and take no action on it.
You need a
Sorry,
second.
Dr. Gandhi.
I would concur. The original motion at the last board meeting was brought by Doug and I. It was to highlight something that happened at negotiations this year. There's some things that happened with the negotiated agreement this year that were unique to past practice, and it was to highlight that issue. Though there is an avenue to fulfill the original hiring offer that was presented to some of the employees that were hired while negotiations were in progress, and our attorney has given us a process to do that. I think the process that they're using we would be misusing that step. So I think that it's best to just recognize that this was something that just happened as a product of negotiations and let that motion die in itself. Moving forward, like I said, our HR had been using the same language on the contracts for new employees for as long as we know. I think it's like 9+ years. But we will be changing the language because you don't know something's a problem until it happens. And this was something that was different than has ever been before. So we are getting new language that we'll be using moving forward. So hopefully it won't be as problematic if new employees end up going back in what's negotiated.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Anne Marie, I see you have your hand up, and Jim, do you still have your hand up? Anne Marie, go ahead.
I just want to make sure everybody is aware that the motion is on the floor. It had been made and seconded at the last meeting and then just postponed for action to this meeting. So I know there's some conversation about potentially letting it die. We will need to take official action on that. So if there's a desire to not approve this motion, then I would recommend that people vote no, but there would be a need to vote on it, or someone need to make a motion to postpone indefinitely, which would then therefore kill the motion. So we will need to do something though with this motion that's on the floor.
All right, discussion. My preference would be that we vote with the explanation that's been given, which has been recorded.
Well, Jim just suggested letting it die on the floor. Is that the same as what you said, Anne Marie, in terms of procedure? Could he have a second to that and it would just end the discussion?
No, you would either need to vote on this motion because it is an active motion that has been moved and seconded. It is a discussion now. You need to do something with it. So you either need to postpone it indefinitely, which in effect kills the motion, or you just need to simply do a vote and have the motion fail due to majority voting no.
Jim, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, let's vote.
I'm ready. Go ahead, Anne Marie.
Newman,
No.
Paulson,
No.
Benson,
No.
Gullickson,
No.
Holden,
No.
Johnson,
No.
Brian Nelson,
No.
Robin Nelson,
No.
President Knudsen.
No, motion fails. Okay, we have item C that was added to the agenda, and Jennifer, you brought forth that topic. Would you like to introduce the topic? And we would need a motion followed by a second to take any action. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. So I introduced this kind of, I guess, in the beginning a little bit. I had the chance to attend the invite from State Superintendent Kirsten Baszler last week, where she invited school board members to participate in a conversation with her, specifically really around COVID and mitigation strategies and community engagement and student achievement scores and our results per district. And one of the things, as I mentioned in the beginning, is she gave kudos to 2 districts within the state of North Dakota in terms of how they work directly with their community and incorporated that community input into their decision making of policy. And the question was really posed to her. She was asked if a district should use parent surveys to guide decisions. And she highly encouraged it. And I think most of you who have probably heard her speak or gone to any of her seminars at any of our state board meetings, you'll hear that consistently from her, that and student achievement in terms of a board member's, two of a board member's responsibilities. And so she said it was very valuable. And she encouraged that every district do that. And she reminded us also that if we're not doing that, that we're not doing our job, because we are elected to represent our community's thoughts and ideas. That is our job. And obviously, not everyone in our community has the same opinion in terms of our mask mandates. And I find it very concerning. I think I've shared that over several meetings now. This universal sort of one size fits all approach. I think it's irresponsible. I think it doesn't include even other health organizations' guidance in terms of even the varying World Health Organization. I think it doesn't consider an individual circumstances. And so I reviewed West Fargo's plan, and in their resolution, they included additional masking guidance in there. And so I would encourage us to also do this within our plan. And that is, they highlight specific categories of circumstances where modifications would need to be made. For example, in certain situations, whether it's activities, or whether it's if they can physically distance in a classroom, or whether it's let's see here, cannot wear, we talked about learning. We've also heard from parents in terms of youngsters having their face covered. How do you do that with speech therapy? So they highlight some of those under their additional masking guidance in their plan for these mitigation strategies. So I wanted to, because I think that this is something that I wish we could have done from the beginning. I think time is of the essence. Our kids right now are under this universal masking mandate. And I just encourage us to recognize that that is not the best for each individual. And I feel like their mitigation strategies, and even what Kirsten said, it was really in some areas, in all areas, it was a compromise, right? They worked together to come to a compromise. So there are things in here that, not everybody's going to like on either side, but it does a better job. Instead of this universal masking mandate, it does a better job of recognizing that individuals have different needs. And so I think that, let me just reference my notes here to make sure that the other thing that she suggested, and that I feel might be missing from our current plan, is she said, if a district is going to, implement quarantine or isolation sort of rules, we better have a plan for what that looks like in terms of, if that's 10 days, if that's 14 days, how are we educating the student while they're out for 10 days out of the classroom? Because that is a significant amount of time. And as you know, there's been significant learning loss for our students over the last year and a half. And so I think we need to be more specific there as to what does that look like, whether that's having an opportunity to, if they're not really ill, right, symptomatic, to dial into the classroom and participate and actually still continue the learning, because after all, that is the law, that we are in the business of education. And so we need to figure out what that delivery method is going to look like. She also said some things that I feel like really resonated, and that is, I just wanted to take the opportunity to highlight, over the past 2 years, our children have really bared this burden, and it should have never been their burden to bear. And so it is our responsibility to do better here. And I feel like parents have tried in every avenue possible. We didn't do a survey, and we should have. Our past practice shows, and our community engagement conversation committee always is having, how can we additionally encourage engagement? We do an annual community forum, a negotiation survey, we surveyed for restart planning, guided practice centers, calendars. We renaming buildings, we do it. So there is already an established precedence. We do it. So we can't even say, well, that goes again to survey parents around this masking guidance. That would go against our normal practice. That's not accurate. The other thing, I guess, I would like, which can be a separate really conversation of this, is I think that we need to engage more of the medical community outside of Fargo Pass Public Health. There's a variety of medical experts, right, in the field that we should also be hearing from, that I think would be responsible for us to do, and really have a discussion about meeting the needs of all of our students and what that could look like. It
Jennifer-
seems to me.
Oh,
go ahead.
Jennifer, would it be okay? For a bit, I see Dr. Newman has her hand up, and so does Jim. And I'm wondering if they have a couple of comments that are pertaining to this, because since we're at this business section of the agenda, I feel like we're going to need to have a motion in order to have, more fruitful or directed discussion. So if I could call on Jim, and then Tracy, if you still have your hand up, then you afterwards, and then we'll go back to you, Jennifer. Go ahead,
Okay.
Jim.
Yeah, well, I would like to see the motion. I'd like to see it in writing. This is why I voted against adding it to the agenda. I agree this is a discussion we need to have, but I think we need to have the information in front of us. I have no clue what West Fargo's resolution is. And reading it to me right now is not going to help me make a decision about it. This is why this should have come to governance to get scheduled, so we'd actually have a board memo with the data in it. But I understand that this is very time certain as well, so I'm not criticizing at all, Jennifer, on that. But if you have a motion to make that doesn't require, like a 1.5-page resolution, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I could keep it
Okay.
simple.
Sorry, Jennifer, one
Okay.
second.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. I don't see Tracy's hand up anymore. I did see David raising his hand, and then Jennifer, I will
Okay. Go ahead.
I will for sure go back to you. Go ahead,
Okay.
David.
Am I up?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you
Okay.
are.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Jennifer is saying. We should have had this discussion. It's in the best interest of the people who we serve. We are elected. Nobody anointed us and said that we are to go out and lead this school district. We were elected to listen to our patrons, and we're not doing it. The fact that we're sitting here looking at each other on television screens, to me, is another prime example of that. I understood everything Jim said, and I agree with that as well. I wholeheartedly feel that we should take a position on this, but I'm not going to be able to vote on something that I can't see. I don't know what West Fargo's resolution says. I wish that this could be scheduled for our work session on Tuesday so that we all knew exactly what the language is and what we were voting on. But we have got to start paying attention to the people who put us in these seats, and we're not doing it.
All right. I said I would go back to Jennifer. So Jennifer, if you would like to take a little bit of time, and then I want to make sure we get back to Robin and Brian.
Okay.
I have comments, but I want to share mine at the end. Go ahead,
Okay.
Jennifer.
Thank you. And I appreciate both of your perspectives there, Jim and David. And that would have been ideal as well. But as we know, this is kind of a fluid situation. This conference call with Superintendent Baszler only happened last Thursday. And so, and I did request that this be added with the documentation, but because we didn't have another, prior to public notice going out on Friday, but was given the direction that that wasn't allowable. So perhaps at the work session, I know that is on the agenda in terms of how to add things to the agenda. So perhaps we have that conversation as well when it is a situation like this where timeliness is important, because the last thing I want to have happen is for us to sit here and say, we recognize this, we are okay with this, but we need 2 more weeks to think about it when our kids are still under this universal mandate. So what I would like to do is in a motion, and you might, craft this maybe together, but I would like, my motion would be to remove the mandate, the mask mandate, replace the word mandate with like recommendation, right? The universal recommendation. And then I'm fine if you add to the motion to take the next 2 weeks to study the data needed to address and modify the other criteria. Because their document is 3 pages long. So, you know, there's something for us obviously to take a further look at and know that within this document is also sort of their guidelines for exposure and things like that, which we already have. That is already out there on our website. There's already, so there, you know, that might be something obviously worthy of discussion, but it's not like it doesn't exist. So really the only thing I'm asking to modify in the motion is to remove the mandate for the masks and give that authority back to the parents right now. And as we take the next few weeks to study what that looks like moving forward, like, for example, what our thresholds are. West Fargo set thresholds in terms of their monitoring and how and when masks, if any mandate, would be placed back into practice for certain classrooms because of certain exposures. And so those are the details we could get into in the discussion, I think. And that would more, that would be similar to then what West Fargo is already doing, which clearly, if you look at their numbers and our numbers, they're not really different. Matter of fact, theirs are a little lower than ours on a weekly basis, and they have significantly more students. So if that makes you feel better in terms of what is happening, to understand that that comparison is very similar in terms
Okay,
of
Jennifer,
rates. So, does that answer your question?
I hate interrupting. Here's what I am suggesting, because we would need an exact motion to be able to take to go further on this. So since Seth and Brian also had their hands up, if you're, Jennifer, if you want to, as a suggestion, use the time when they're sharing their thoughts, if there's anything you'd like to write up, so that then you could verbalize the motion to us that you're interested in us considering. It would need a second. That would be my suggestion. Seth. Seth, go ahead.
I'm all for having discussion on this as well. Like I said, like Jim had reiterated too, that we need an avenue to go down and information in front of us, I think. And I would suggest too that, Jennifer, for the motion that you're trying to make, I don't remember and I don't recall, and I was just trying to look it up in my previous emails about the motion that we voted on. We didn't vote. Nothing in the motion said anything about mandating masks. It said that we would take the advice or the guidance from Fargo Cast Public Health. So we didn't vote to mandate masks. We voted to adhere to the guidance of Fargo Cast Public Health. So I think if we're going to make a motion that goes against that motion, it has to be worded the same as the original motion, because there was no word mandate in that motion that we voted on. So I don't know if that helps move this along a little bit. If we are going to put a motion on the floor right now, like I said, I am all in favor of having discussion about this. I think there are anomalies within the system that warrant discussion on this, but I think we need to have some more information in front of us before we vote on anything, I guess, is my 2 cents.
All right, Brian.
Thanks, Seth. That's what I was going to mention as well. And then David, to your point too, that we're not listening to people. You say we, are you including me? Because I'm listening to a lot of people telling me a lot of things on both sides. So I'm just wondering your language and saying we're just not listening to people. I am listening to a lot of people.
I did want to share a few comments as well. And reiterating the listening part, there are just some decisions that we've made that not everyone agrees with. That's true. I do feel like I'm listening to those who have been visiting with me in a variety of ways. I believe that there were others of us on the board likely on that call as well. It was publicly noticed at least, so others of us could be on. I was on that call. I was interested in visiting with Superintendent Basler after the call because some of what was shared was certainly different than what we are doing in the Fargo School District, and different in the way we came about our decision in embracing the mitigation procedures that are recommended by Fargo Cass Public Health. In visiting with Kirsten following that Q&A, and that was the next day when I visited with her on the phone, and we had a good detailed conversation. Certainly there are some things that I'd like us to consider. It is very, very evident that it is up to the board to make this decision. The legislature has clarified this, that it is our decision. There is the direction from the state is that the decision on how we proceed belongs to the board. Superintendent Basler certainly shared some of her thoughts. Some of that comes from her previous experience as an educator, as a board member, and she was posed some questions about her thoughts. It doesn't mean we ought to disregard those comments. It also means that we make the decisions here in terms of how we choose to operate. And in my discussion with Kirsten Basler, and I know this was reflected in Dr. Gandhi's weekly update to the board too, because he also spoke with Kirsten after this, and hopefully we all had a chance to read those comments. The way I took her feedback to me wasn't about the decision we made in regard to what direction we follow. It was about the decision-making process that we made. And a conversation clearly ended at, we followed a very clear decision-making process on the board. We decided to follow that process. Other school districts followed other processes. It doesn't mean that we have a failed process. And so I would just like to offer that other perspective in a nutshell. Really keep in mind, we can, yes, take the thoughts into consideration from Superintendent Basler, also the people in our community that are contacting us on both sides of the issue. The decision that we made was to follow the guidance of Cass Public Health, which is a very a fluid and a flexible motion that we approved at our meeting. So it means that if public health says, hey, we have an opportunity to lift some of the mitigation procedures, we can do that. The district has the ability to do that without the board even taking action. That doesn't mean that we can't continue to have this conversation, and I'm open to having the conversation and ideas and flexibility. I too think that I wanted to honor the process. Jennifer contacted me. I wanted to honor the process and have the option of holding this on the agenda if the board approved. I would prefer that if we're going to take further action on this, that we go through governance so that we're able to have the information in front of us at our disposal, as well as the public. Anyone next?
Can I ask a clarifying question about something that Seth mentioned?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So Seth, you mentioned nowhere in that recommendation was there the wording mandate. Rupak and I have had this conversation as well, because CDC and Fargo Cass Public Health they cannot legally say to mandate, right? They cannot make the mandate. So they say a recommendation or to require, or whatever their wording is not mandate. However, our policy is currently a mask mandate. So when you're saying we didn't vote on it, but our administration is interpreting it that way and implementing it that way. So then my question back to you would be like, what do we do about that? Should the motion be directive about, just changing the school policy then? And that's, to say recommend versus mandate. I'm just looking for clarity.
So, okay, Jennifer, I think the challenge that I'm having with this is, and I feel like there is the desire to have a conversation about what the motion should be and how we, if we're going to be making any changes. And what we need, though, really, in order to have probably the most fruitful conversation is a motion, because we all can't be involved in crafting the motion. It's a motion that really needs to start with someone. There needs to be a second. There can be an amendment to the motion, certainly, and we're going to have to then have discussion on a specific motion in order to move really any further. So Seth and then Robin.
Will you let Robin go first? She had her hand up before me.
Oh, certainly. Robin, go ahead.
Thank you. Point of order. We do not have a motion on the floor. Therefore, we are not, through Robert's Rules of Orders, allowed to discuss this motion. So I need a motion on the floor before we even discuss it. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess then my motion, Robin, would be to direct administration to update the current policy to recommend masking versus mandate. So it would be to remove the mandate.
Anne Marie, do you have the language that Jennifer just shared?
What I have down would be that Jennifer Benson moved to direct administration to update the current policy to recommend masking versus mandate.
Is there a second to that?
This is David. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I second that motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second on that. There's been a second on that motion. Now we may have additional conversation specific to that motion. Anyone? Robin and then Seth.
Rebecca, so recommended masking, how does that play into exclusion and quarantine? I know the school district can't quarantine anybody, but exclusion from school. This is much more complicated than saying mask yes or mask no.
And Robin, you were asking that question of me. I would pose that question to administration. I'm happy to facilitate the question though. Anyone from administration?
I'll take a shot at it. If my understanding is correct, and this is where I would need board directive, then the last motion, which was to implement Fargo CAS's recommendations, would stand, along with this motion, should it pass, which would be to no longer mandate masking, just recommend it. So my assumption would then be that the exclusionary practices being recommended for schools by Fargo CAS and North Dakota Department of Health would still stay in place. And those situations, we have this information on our website. Individuals would have to quarantine if they are a close contact in an unmasked environment, meaning both parties are not masked, unless they are willing to test every other day and have a negative test once every 48 hours. That would be the exception to allow them to continue with schools. So currently if we are sticking with the exclusionary practices recommended by Fargo CAS and North Dakota Department of Health, all close contacts, which is identified by being within 6 feet of 15 cumulative minutes or more, need to quarantine unless the individual that's exposed is vaccinated the exposure is in a mass-to-mass situation, or the individual that is exposed is unvaccinated, was in an unmasked situation, and is willing to test every other day. So unless directed by the board otherwise, that would be my understanding of how to balance the previously adopted recommendation along with this motion should it pass.
So Rebecca, can I follow up on that? So how
Certainly.
would contact tracing work? Because I know when West Fargo originally started their process, they did not do contact tracing. So this is much more complicated than masks, no masks. So I would like some explanation on that.
I appreciate your question, Robin, but I don't know that it is more complicated because the decision tree, it doesn't look very simple the way it is. Oh, sorry, trying to answer a question.
Point of order, the board president calls on people to comment.
Oh,
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we're all trying to work together and navigate
Yeah.
our virtual setup. So we'll give each other a little bit more grace here. Dr. Gandhi, do you have anything you'd like to add that ties into Robin's additional question?
Yeah, Robin's question is, how would contact tracing work in this situation? I might have to defer to Bob and Missy if they have any kind of further guidance on how contact tracing works now. It does make the situation more complicated. I know that the Department of Health notifies the schools and we're working with them to help identify who would be close contacts. There's also the interview process that they go through when someone does test positive. I don't know if that would change, but it would change the dynamic because now we would have a lot more unmasked contacts. And in order for those individuals to stay in school, assuming our population chooses not to follow the recommendation and chooses not to wear the masking, then we would have a lot more students that we would have had to contact trace and keep track of whether they're participating in the every other day testing program to stay in school or not. I'm not sure if Bob or Missy have more information on that.
Bob or Missy, do either of you have something to add?
No, I believe Dr. Gandhi has defined that fairly well.
Missy, how about you?
I can just provide an example that we would have more students who would need to do the testing, as Dr. Gandhi has said. And right now we are not ready to do testing in our building. We are working on that. So that is probably a difficult spot for some families for transportation, would be one consideration.
I know, Seth, you have your hand up. A concern I have is, how does this lead to perhaps more children not face-to-face in school? And if they have to be quarantining, what our process is to help make sure that they receive the continuing education that I know we all want them to have, which ideally is face-to-face. Seth, you had a question?
Yeah, I feel as one comment comes out, 50 questions pop up. So when you're talking about the need for the testing every 48 hours, can we force them to test? So then that raises another question. If we can't force them to test and they refuse to test, are we running into truancy issues? Because they can't go to school unless they test. So, are we, if we can't force them to test, then they can't go to school. And if they can't go to school because of their decision that they don't want to test, where does that leave us with that part of it?
Thank you, Seth. Go ahead, Dr. Gandhi.
Seth, I'll try to unpack that in a couple ways. So yeah, if my interpretation, again, I would look to the board, is correct, that we're following the exclusionary practices, then individuals that are in an unmasked environment, yeah, their only option to stay in school and avoid a quarantine if they're deemed a close contact would be to test every other day or have that one negative test for every 48 hours. We use those two terms synonymously because there's weekends and some different things that could fall into it. However, if they choose not to do that, that has to come with parent consent. Or, if they can choose not to do that, then they would be absent. Now, within our school policies, we have parent requests for absences as well. So it's not a matter of excuse or unexcused. but those students would be out of school until at least day 10, and I have to verify this on the decision tree, and then testing negative to come back. So yeah, they would have to miss a period of time that masking as a mitigation strategy doesn't provide. However, there is that opportunity for the students or family that want to test every other day if they are deemed that exposure. So that's the current guidance as we've been told.
Any other board members have comments
Can I
or
ask
questions? Jennifer?
ask a question? So Rupak, maybe you know the answer to this, but I don't believe West Fargo's numbers have any higher quarantines than ours, and they've been unmasked all year.
I don't know what their quarantine numbers are.
And when I look at their resolution versus ours, I mean, you still have those same recommendations, right? Those that are fully vaccinated do not need to quarantine unless symptomatic. Mass to mass situations do not need to quarantine unless symptomatic. These are all exactly what we already have. That was the point I was trying to make earlier, is those don't have to change. And their numbers, the result is their numbers in quarantine, unless somebody can correct me, are not any higher.
Let's see. I don't see any other hands up. I'm hesitant. I'll just share my thoughts. I'm hesitant to support the motion tonight. It doesn't mean I value the conversation, and I think we're certainly we're honoring both sides of the issue here. There are strong opinions on both sides, and we do have our current motion, which that was approved again, which was to follow the guidance of Fargo Cass Public Health. I would be much more comfortable myself if we had this coming through governance, if we had some more thorough conversation so that we could help answer some of the questions that we've all been asking here tonight and have a more thorough conversation about it. I appreciate that it has been brought up and that we have been having the dialogue, though. I think that's necessary. Dr. Gandhi and Jim.
Jennifer, I respect this conversation. Someone shared with me an example of West Fargo's exposure notification. If that is true, what was just shared with me, then I don't believe they are following all the exclusionary practices recommended by the Department of Health or Fargo Cass. I don't want to speak without talking to people in West Fargo. So knowing that, I think there's two pieces to this conversation. I think the motion or the amended motion that you're making at this point doesn't talk about exclusionary practices. It only talks about masking. So I don't want to necessarily say that if we approve this, that means that we're not going to follow the exclusionary practices. That's where I need guidance from the board, because I would still interpret the action taken on August 10th to still hold true unless the board reverses course on that action as well. But from my understanding, or at least one example that was just shared with me, they're not following all of the exclusionary practices that have been recommended. But I don't want to speak on behalf of West Fargo because I haven't studied their plan in the complete detail. Jim,
go ahead.
Well, two things. First of all, I think Anne Marie has something to share, so please call on her as soon as I'm done. I really think this is a discussion we need to carry over into our retreat. Obviously, this is a very fluid situation. I'm not prepared to vote for this motion without more data in front of me. I might support this motion with data in front of me, but I think we really need to defer this action until we've had a more thorough discussion with data to look at.
Anne Marie, did you have a comment?
So I was just going to share, similar to what Dr. Gandhi was saying, I don't believe that West Fargo is doing contact tracing in schools like we are. They are not enforcing those exclusionary practices for close contacts because they're not mandating masks wholesale. So they differ there. And then also kind of in line with Dr. Gandhi, just want to share the motion on the floor talks about specifically masking not all of the recommendations from Fargo Pass Public Health that you talked about at August 10th. And so just putting out there that there would a motion also could be made to rescind something you previously adopted. So just talking about some options for you there.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I don't see any other hands up. Are we able to vote?
David Paulson has his hand up, Rebecca.
David, go ahead.
Can't hear you.
David, could you unmute, please?
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
as much as I would like to see us vote on this motion and see it pass, I've got to agree with Jim that we have a far better chance of people making a decision if they have more background on what it is we're actually doing. We tabled the motion last session, didn't we, about the contract, the salaries that we were going to vote on? Could this not be tabled in the same manner until next Tuesday or the next board meeting, with the understanding that we are going to talk about this at our retreat and flesh it out?
That could be an option. Anne Marie, what would we need to do in order for that to happen?
To do that correctly within Robert's Rules of Order, you would need to postpone the motion to a certain time that you would specify in the motion.
So we would need someone to make that motion?
Correct.
Rebecca,
Okay.
can I ask Rebecca?
Jim and then Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table this discussion until our September 28th meeting, with it being added as a discussion item at our board retreat.
Second.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Robin, for the second. Any discussion? Jennifer.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a question for everyone that I would like to hear your feedback on. How do we tonight, what information would you need tonight to make a decision to remove the word mandate, put it as a recommendation, strongly recommended, whatever you want for universal masking, so that these kids no longer have to bear this burden for another month and a half before we make a decision? That seems unacceptable to me. I'll stay here till midnight if we have to get the information that you all feel like you need to be comfortable with that decision, because honestly, quarantining and contact tracing and all of that, again, is up to the board. It is not a law. It is only a recommendation. So you don't actually have to do any of it. And I think the best evidence you have is West Fargo, your neighbor who has more kids than us, has not had a mask mandate. 90% of their kids or more are not wearing masks to school, and their numbers for COVID positive cases are lower than ours. You guys, this is not okay to continue to let our kids bear this burden. It is not responsible to put it off for another month or a month and a half.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, whatever. 2 weeks. Sorry, I thought you said October.
David?
I understand Jennifer's frustration. I feel it exactly the same way. But some valid points have been put up here. I know that unless West Fargo has changed their protocol from the beginning, when they chose not to mask, they also chose not to do contact tracing. The problem I have with this, if we have a mask recommendation now, rather than the mandate as we have now, I am afraid that we are going to see a large number of kids quarantined. We're going to have kids sitting out for 10 days. We've already lost so much education. I don't want to see that happen. I really feel that if we have a mask recommendation, which I desperately want, that we also are likely going to have to stop contact tracing at the same time. That's the point that that's the concern that I have, that by passing this tonight, without making any other modifications to our plan, we are going to have a lot of kids not face-to-face with a teacher, and we've already had far too much of that.
Thank you, David. Jim, your hand has been up for a while. Are you still, do you still have a comment?
I just need to apologize to the group. I have to drive to Minneapolis, so I'm going to be leaving the meeting here shortly.
So if we can have maybe a couple more minutes here to finish up our discussion before Jim has to take off. Anne Marie, go ahead.
I would like to get the motion clarified, please, so I have that down. Would it, first off, and then I would like to do a reminder as well, but would it be accurate? Would I have it accurately? That Jim moved to postpone the motion to the September 28th meeting for action, with a discussion being held at the September 21st retreat. Is that accurate?
If you could change the word retreat to work session.
Yes, my apologies there.
I would say that's accurate.
Okay, thank you. And then I would just do a kind reminder that your discussion right now needs to be germane to the motion on the floor, which currently you're talking about postponing the motion until September 28th. So I'd ask you to keep your comments germane to the action of postponement to a certain date.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. Jennifer.
Thank you. So question on Anne Marie, can we amend it, the amendment one more time in order? And what I mean by that is to add something to the original motion to make it time sensitive again for tonight.
I'm not sure. Sure. I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question fully, but you could amend the motion on the floor, which you're talking about right now, which is postponement, and you could amend it for the date you're postponing it to. I'm not sure if you're referencing the motion about postponement or your original motion.
So really, I guess it would be my original motion, because I had asked the question to board members, what would they need for information? And it seems like what I'm hearing is that they're concerned about contact tracing following that, so that more kiddos aren't out of school. And so if that's the case, I would amend the motion to remove or to pause the contact tracing. That's what I'm wondering if I can do.
Anne Marie, I don't believe that's allowable at this point, right? We have a different motion in front of us to consider.
Correct. Right now, because somebody has made a motion to postpone, you first need to deal with this motion to postpone before, and if that would pass, then that motion would be postponed. So nothing further right now can be dealt with the original motion, because you're dealing right now with that motion to postpone. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right now, I would like to encourage us to vote on the motion to postpone, and it would be to be postponed to our next regular meeting. I know, Anne Marie, you have the official language, with also the knowing that there would be a discussion. This would be added to the work session agenda that's coming up. Jennifer, are you okay if we go ahead and vote on that now?
Yes, one more clarifying question. I'm able to make a new motion after this vote, correct? I believe, yes. I just want you to know my intention, so.
Let's go ahead and vote on this, and we'll see where we are after that. Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Paulson.
No.
Benson.
No.
Gullickson.
Yes.
Holden.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Brian Nelson.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes.
Newman.
No.
Knutson.
Yes, motion passes. So what we have then is that this motion would be in front of us at our next regular board meeting, with discussion at our work session, and that is coming up September 21st.
Point of order. Can you please review that that motion that was just passed. Anne Marie, can you please reread that?
Move to postpone the motion to the September 28th meeting for action, with discussion being held at the September 21st work session.
Thank you.
Any question? Did you just need that for clarification, Robin?
I did. Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Thank you. So I would like to make a motion for us to consider, and that is to remove the mask mandate immediately, replace that mandate with a recommendation, as well as pause contact tracing, and move that to the discussion at the work session as to how to proceed with that mitigation strategy.
Anne Marie, do you have the language of that motion?
I would ask for that to be repeated, please.
Okay. Remove the mask mandate immediately, making it a recommendation versus the mandate, and to pause contact tracing until it can be further discussed at the upcoming work session.
Point of order, isn't there already a motion on the floor and we were voting on an amendment to that motion?
Anne Marie, is it appropriate that this?
I thought there was a motion prior to Jennifer's.
That one is being tabled till the next regular board meeting.
I thought there was one prior to that.
That motion, there was the motion to postpone it to the next meeting. So the first motion that was made this evening, I think that you're referencing, is the one that is being postponed until the next meeting. So Jennifer has just issued a new motion for consideration. Anne Marie, let us know if that's inappropriate.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Rebecca, as far as.
Is Jennifer able to make that motion?
Well, it's an interesting motion because there is a motion that was tabled till the next meeting about removing the mask mandate. So right now what I have down is that Jennifer Benson moved to remove the mask mandate immediately, making it a recommendation versus a mandate, and pause contact tracing until it can be further discussed at the upcoming work session. That's what I have down.
Yes, and my question was to make sure that it is within parliamentary procedure that another motion is able to be made this evening.
Well, definitely another motion could be made this evening. I think you would need to discuss the merits of the motion at hand versus the one that was postponed. At this time, there's not a second for this current motion.
That's right. Yes. So if there is a second, we will continue further. Is there a second to that motion? I do not see a second to the motion. So the motion would fail. And that would take us through to board reports on our agenda. The first item on board reports is the appointment of convention delegates to the North Dakota School Boards Association. We have 5 individuals serving that can serve as delegates, 5 spots. I did hear back from Dr. Newman indicating she was interested. Are there other board members that would like to volunteer to serve in that role? Keeping in mind, you are going to need to stay until the finish of the convention. Jennifer, is your hand up regarding this item? And then I see
no,
Nikki.
I'm sorry. I don't know how to turn it off. Oh, there we go. I think I got it. Sorry.
Okay, so I see Nikki as you're interested in serving. Robin, Brian, and Tracy, you are still interested in serving? Okay, so Tracy, Robin, Brian.
I think Seth has his hand up as well.
Nikki and Seth. So that's 5, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Nikki, Robin, Brian, Tracy, and Seth, if those are who you would be appointing.
I am perfectly happy to appoint all 5 of you. And there's no business that's required on that. So Anne Marie, will you be following up with them on information they need?
Yes, at this point, now that you have appointed those delegates, I will complete the registration process for all of those who are attending, along with administration that are attending. So yes, that will be done here this week. And so plan to get some more information both from NDSBA in your email after I complete that registration. And then I will follow up with more information to our group as well for hotel stays and that type of thing. So more to come on that topic.
Okay, thank you. I do believe Jim left. Let's see here. I'm just going to go in order of who I see. Nikki, you are first. Go ahead and unmute, Nikki.
There we go. For CEA, let's see, we last met August 17th. We've started working our plan for the year, and we will meet again Friday to further enhance that. We've got quite a bit on our agenda, so I'm looking forward to that. I guess that's about it for right now.
Okay, sounds good. And I know you sent that update out too regarding the response when folks contact all board members. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, we did work together to update that verbiage because we wanted, the intent of that was for people to understand we're seeing these emails, we're reading these emails. We may not be able to respond to each and every one, but we are reading them and considering them. So we wanted to thank people for reaching out and make it a little friendlier, I guess.
Yeah. Brian.
Nothing tonight.
And Seth.
There we go. On the first, I had a CTE governing board meeting. We took a couple of pieces of action about the fiscal management agreement that's moving to our district, and just approving a grant application. On the 8th, I believe, we had a negotiations, kind of an impromptu negotiations meeting where we needed to discuss a minor detail or a glitch in the matrix, and every pun intended on that one. That we needed to, it looks like that we'll have to open up negotiations again, just to focus on one sentence on one subsection of one article of the contract. But it seems like we have all our seems like us and the FEA are all in agreement on how to fix that situation. So it should be a pretty painless reopening of negotiations. So
thank you, Seth. Robin.
Thank you. I attended the governance committee. I also attended the Fargo Public Health Board meeting, for which I was recently assigned as a liaison. North Dakota School Boards Association. I'm on their GAC committee, Governmental Affairs Committee, and then we had a call to update resolutions for the fall conference that you all see in October. Chamber eggs and issues with area superintendents. Thank you, Dr. Gandhi, for representing our district so well. Superintendent Baszler's Q&A about COVID and school reentry. I think about 4 or 5 of us participated, so thank you, fellow school board members. I contacted all of my liaison schools, working on getting in touch with their PTAs and their staff meetings. And then I also visited Lewis and Clark. That's one of my liaison schools. And due to my job, I also had the luxury of being at Longfellow, Washington, Ed Clapp, and Centennial, and Bennett. So that is it. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Tracy.
Thank you. My daughter had the pleasure of attending the state superintendent cabinet meeting. I think she's one of 3 or 4 Fargo Public School students who have a privilege to serve on that board. So we traveled to Bismarck, and that was really fun to have a say in things impacting our students and what we could be doing better in North Dakota. I too attended the school board Q&A with Kirsten Basler on September 9th. And I'll just take this time to make a few comments around that. Yeah, you know, one of the questions that was raised here tonight about polling the public, that was one of many questions that was asked to her, not the only. And I think the clarification here is really important. Her answer around that question was that we should not change the precedent on what we've done previously in school surveys. It was not specific to COVID-19. She was very clear about that. And to my knowledge, Fargo Public Schools has not ever surveyed the public about medical or public health emergencies. So her comments were, you should do what you have done in the past, which I think we do an excellent job of. We survey the subject about, or excuse me, the public about, for example, changing the name of Woodrow Wilson or other issues. So just a point of important clarification there. I do think, you know, some of the things discussed here tonight, this West Fargo school district plan is very reactionary in nature. It's not preventative, and I'm happy to talk about this further, but mitigation efforts in schools should be aimed at prevention. And that would be really taking a step backwards from what we're doing now. And that would be in concordance with every major medical association, of course, making these recommendations. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Jennifer. Jennifer, are you muted?
Yes, sorry, thank you. So I began by saying I really couldn't possibly disagree with Tracy more in what she just said, but specifically I want to highlight that I said, when I shared out about Kirsten Basler's conference call, I specifically did state examples of when Fargo Public Schools has engaged parents around public health issues. And specifically that is the Restart Plan survey, as well as the guided practice centers. So it is not deviating from past practice, which is why exactly I shared those examples. So what deviated was that we didn't include them this time in terms of a survey. So there's that. And in terms of preventative, I guess, you know, the fact that there's a wide variety of strategies being implemented is pretty clear that there is not just one universal opinion. So hence my request earlier for more discussion from multiple practices, multiple therapeutic areas, including maybe virology or infectious disease, or I think that we need to be more inclusive. Even the World Health Organization and CDC do not align on their recommendations around when a individual should or should not wear a mask. World Health Organization, no child under 5 should. CDC says 2 and above, okay? World Health Organization says no student, no child that is engaged in an activity should, like a sports activity, should be wearing a mask. Fargo Public Schools is making kids wear a mask in gym class and in sports. So
I need to hold on. Sorry, Jennifer. I need to butt in here because I really, and I know we're towards the end here of item B on the board reports section, but if we can really try to stick to committee liaison and correspondence for this section, that would be great. I feel like we had a fruitful conversation under business regarding the current item. So if there's something to share on that regard.
With all due respect, Rebecca, this is correspondence information as well, as, you know, it's out there, but we're also being given it. So the fact that we didn't talk about it in our last discussion is, I mean, I can, as a board member, I should be able to share this during my correspondence share out as well. So, and anyway, I'll leave it at that. And so let me please finish. Now let me find my spot. The other thing that I made reference to earlier, but I wanted to highlight at this point in time is Kirsten spoke about our student achievement results per district. Hey, and said that she had sent out an email to board presidents with those results. So that monitoring information, I would appreciate having forwarded to me, and as well for it to be incorporated. Please consider this my request to place it on governance or wherever you need it to be, for that to be discussed at a full board meeting, what we intend to do about those results or with that information moving forward. And then let me check my notes here. There was, I believe that might have been my last, I felt like I had 2 requests, but perhaps I covered it, but sorry, I sort of got derailed there. Student achievement. Thank you for a moment of patience here. The rest of the discussion obviously will happen at the special board. No. I think that was all actually I have on my notes. So thank you for your patience there.
Okay, David, I can't remember. Sorry, did I call on you already?
Not yet, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
I have nothing to report. I know that this has been brought up before, and I think probably needs to be brought up again. The purpose of this portion of the agenda is supposed to be for reports on committee work and liaisons, not a conversation about child achievements or anything like that. I'm not trying to knock anybody down for that, but if we stay with the agenda, the purpose is committee and liaison reports. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm going to work to stick to that with a few items that I want to mention that I've attended or been up to. The Chamber Eggs and Issues breakfast last week, attending the CEA meeting, the negotiations committee meeting, my first opportunity attending negotiations, and we had a great discussion. I also, on the topic of negotiations and the memorandums of understanding that were agreed upon with the contract, Kim Belgard, the FEA president, and I met this week for lunch, and we are planning to do that on a regular basis to just put some initial thoughts together regarding moving forward with those MOUs. And at the work session on September 21st, that's one of the agenda items, is for me to get feedback and ideas from the board in terms of how to move forward with just regarding what our expectations are of those MOUs. So I'm looking forward to that conversation, and then your guidance as to who you would like to see participate on those committees. There are 6, one calls for 6 and one calls for 5 in terms of membership. I participated in the town hall yesterday afternoon, and the topic was that was scheduled was on, again, negotiations and more thoroughly the MOUs. So I just talked about the process, touching on that and reminding the attendees that we have the September 21st meeting where we'll have more discussion on it. Also, like I said earlier, attended Superintendent Basler's Q&A and had that follow-up phone conversation with her. Davies is one of my liaison schools, and they held a flag raising ceremony last Friday in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I attended that. One thing that I would like to call out for anyone listening is there is the grand opening of Dakota High School tomorrow. There's a ceremony at 10:30 in the morning, and I know that board members have been invited to attend that. If we're able to be there, that would be great. It looks like they have a nice ceremony planned. We have homework that is due September 22nd. Gave Anne Marie a little bit of a break on the printed homework, or on the printed calendar. So for the president's report, since we're meeting virtually, we did not issue that calendar, but homework due September 22nd. And then the work session will be in person. So for those of us that are participating in the work session, board members and anyone from administration that we need in order to do our work, we will be in person, and it will be recorded and available for those who aren't attending in person to be able to listen in on our dialogue. And I think that is it. I appreciate all of you hanging with us here tonight, and we have a meeting next on September 28th, and it's 8:55. We are adjourned. Thank you. Have a great night.